Chapter 101. Sooner or later, we'll meet. Dark Knight Palace Headquarters, Dark Knight Demon Palace. Inside an utterly dim hall, a figure sat upon a skeletal throne. The figure seemed to blend into the shadows. It appeared ethereal, unfathomable. This figure was the greatest behind-the-scenes boss of the Dark Knight Palace, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. He possessed an incredibly handsome, pale face, as if a vampire living in darkness, never seeing the sun. But in stark contrast to his young and handsome face, the skin below his neck was covered in wrinkles. His hands were withered like tree branches. All of this indicated that his age had already surpassed 200 years. His lifespan was nearly at its end. In reality, a normally cultivated nascent soul expert could live for 1,000 years. However, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor had broken through to the nascent soul realm by cultivating evil arts and sacrificing living beings, so he was laden with sin and heavy karma. His lifespan was less than 300 years, and he was already in his twilight years. In the hall, another figure wearing a black robe knelt before the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. This was the head of the Dark Knight Palace's great shamans, Night Demon. Reporting to the Evil Ancestor, I received some not-so-good news, Night Demon reported cautiously. Speak. The Evil Ancestor's voice sounded incredibly old, but it carried a peculiar magnetic quality. The deployment at the Tai Xu Sect failed. By Chang'e and Jianlian, those two wastes, have been executed by the Tai Xu Sect. The other chess pieces, aside from my insignificant informant, have also been eliminated. Night Demon's voice was low. Oh. Upon hearing this, a look of gloominess immediately appeared on the handsome face of the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. In his conception, orchestrating this upheaval at the Tai Xu Sect was intended to make blood flow like a river for them. Thus, he could use the soul-attracting banner to capture 10,000 living beings and refine countless corpses. Among them would even be the sect master of the Tai Xu Sect and several grand elders. Through this battle, his soul-attracting banner could also transform into a demon artifact of the same grade as an immortal artifact, and he himself could gain a glimpse of the laws of death, possessing the true trump cards and methods of a nascent soul powerhouse. At the same time, his demon seed was also in the Tai Xu Sect. He could capture her and achieve rebirth by possessing her body. However, he didn't expect the plan to fail before it could even be put into action. Although the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's expression seemed calm, his eyes betrayed a strong sense of unwillingness and regret. In the next moment, his voice was low. What exactly happened? How were Bai Changqing and the others exposed? The great shaman Night Demon reported the entire sequence of events to him in detail. After listening, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's eyes immediately showed a violent fluctuation. What? That Chu Zhetian of the Tai Xu Sect has actually broken through to the nascent soul realm? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor, having lived for nearly 300 years, and whose mind was already incredibly calm, was now somewhat unsettled. What kind of peerless monster was this? Breaking through to the nascent soul realm at less than 30 years old. Moreover, he had also mastered a divine ability, clearly having comprehended some kind of law of the heavens. He had even subdued the Heavenly Saber Sect. Could it be? Is this person also reborn by relying on a demon seed, or some other means? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's heart trembled, a variety of speculations surging within him. The emergence of Chu Zhetian, this genius of the Tai Xu Sect, gave him an unprecedented sense of pressure. Not only was the plan thwarted, but the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor knew that he and the other person, although they had never met, had an irreconcilable hatred. His demon seed was precisely the other person's daughter. The two would one day have to fight to the death. Right, the whereabouts of that traitor, Yiling Mei. Have you found them yet? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor asked in a deep voice. Night Demon shook his head. That traitor has been in hiding since she appeared once in Golden Rainbow City. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor let out a cold snort and said softly, "Find her and kill her as soon as possible. This traitor has obtained the inheritance of the Dark Knight Demon God. Once she grows up, she will always be a major threat. Yes, your subordinate understands. Night Demon responded respectfully. Next, after pondering for a long time, the Dark Knight evil ancestor's eyes flashed with a sharp, cold light. Night Demon, you and the 5 Dark Knight children, come with me immediately to Eastern Azure City. I must obtain the Enlightenment Spirit Fruit in the hands of the Eastern Azure ancestor of the Moi sect. This old one must comprehend the laws of death as soon as possible. That afternoon, Chu Zhetian once again went deep into the Golden Rainbow Mountains, wanting to search for clues that the second Grand Elder might have left behind. Just as he approached the cave near the entrance to the Golden Cicada secret realm, his expression suddenly became alert. He saw 2 cultivators wearing Moi robes were wandering in this area, as if they were searching for something. Senior brother, do you think that Nirvana can still appear in these mountains? Who knows? Anyway, we'll just look around, and if we really run into one, with our strength, can we even hold on to them? That's right. That Nirvana is in existence who even killed Elder Emotion. The 2 Moi sect disciples, as they spoke, casually strolled around the mountains. Chu Zhetian's ears twitched. Even from 1,000 meters away, he could clearly hear their conversation. Hee. It seems Emo Qingfei reported the news to the sect. The Moi sect actually sent people here to search for my whereabouts? He secretly sneered, but then furrowed his brow. That's right. Why are the people from the Moi sect acting so brazenly on the Tai Xu Sect's territory? Just as he was about to have that thought, he heard the 2 Moi sect disciples speaking again. You think, will the 5th Elder and Vice Sect Master Jiang get anything out of that bunch of Tai Xu Sect's trash? Hard to say. That Nirvana should have nothing to do with the Tai Xu Sect. That bunch of wastes guarding the Golden Rainbow Pass are unlikely to know the whereabouts of Nirvana. Hee. Even if they don't find out anything, that bunch of wastes probably won't have a good time. That's for sure. Senior brother Qingzhou died tragically. The 5th Elder is heartbroken. They have to find someone to vent on. That bunch of Tai Xu Sect's wastes, they probably will be tortured to the point where life is worse than death. I'm afraid that in the end, not a single one will survive. TSK. As the 2 talked, a cruel smile appeared on their faces. A gleam of anticipation also flashed in their eyes. It seemed they also wanted to go back and torture those Tai Xu Sect people for fun, rather than idly patrolling the mountains. However, in the next second, the 2 suddenly stopped their steps. Simultaneously, a look of horror appeared on their faces. They saw a figure, who knows when, had suddenly appeared in front of them. The figure was tall and straight, with a face as sharp as a chisel. He looked very young, yet gave off an unfathomable feeling. It was Chu Zhetian. What are you 2 Moi sect disciples doing on Tai Xu Sect's territory? Chu Zhetian's face was expressionless, his voice cold. The 2 Moi sect disciples' expressions immediately became alert. Who are you? Tai Xu Sect, Chu Zhetian. Chu Zhetian announced his name coldly. Oh, Tai Xu Sect's little brat? What's it to us if we, from the Moi sect, are looking around on your Tai Xu Sect's territory? Do we need to report to you? One disciple, upon hearing this, a look of contempt appeared on his face. He only knew the Tai Xu Sect was weak, so he acted without restraint. But he didn't know who Chu Zhetian was. The other disciple also sneered and asked, Are you also one of the wastes stationed at Golden Rainbow Pass? Aren't you going to obediently surrender? Swish. As he spoke, the 2 were about to attack Chu Zhetian and directly take him down. Boom, boom. But in the next instant, the 2 flew out backward. In midair, they turned directly into segments of limbs and blood mist. Golden Rainbow Pass, has it been seized again by the Moi sect? And even in order to find out the whereabouts of Nirvana, the station personnel fell into the hands of the Moi sect and are being tormented and questioned? Moi sect, you've done it again and again. You are going too far. Boom. A killing intent, as tangible as substance, suddenly erupted from Chu Zhetian's body. In the next second, his figure turned into an afterimage and rushed towards the direction of Golden Rainbow Pass. Chapter 102. The question should be mine. past stronghold, a training ground. Vice Sect Master Jiang Fengyi and 5th Elder Mo Yueyue of the Moi Sect stood proudly with their hands behind their backs. The latter also had another identity, that of Mo Qingzhou's father. Around the training ground were powerful Moi Sect experts, their auras intimidating. And on the training ground, over 200 people were tied up there. Leading them was none other than the iron-boned Azure Dragon Army, Myriad Commander, Xu Yueyue. Behind him were those 100-plus men who, earlier when faced with Mo Laodao, Mo Qingchen, and others, had also stood out with Xu Yueyue, ready to defend their sect's dignity with their lives. And then, there were some logistical personnel and servants. The female disciple who had previously taken care of Mo Qingfei was also among them. That's right. These 100-plus men, led by Xu Yueyue, were part of the Azure Dragon Army that Su Hongtu had specifically left behind before he left. Even though Su Hongtu had already returned to the sect from Lonesome Smoke City, they were still detained here. Obviously, these men had been ostracized by this Azure Dragon Peak Lord. And now, they had fallen into the hands of the Moi Sect. Kneel. At this moment, Mo Yueyue, the 5th elder of the Moi Sect, suddenly roared. The terrifying pressure belonging to a golden core 8th layer expert immediately enveloped Xu Yueyue and the others. For a time, the sound of vomiting blood echoed everywhere. Furthermore, many people kneeled down, but Xu Yueyue and the other 100 or so iron-boned men still stood there, withstanding the pressure. Even if they were already bleeding from their 7 orifices, and could die at any moment under the pressure of the Golden Core expert. I am telling you, Neil. Mo Yueyue roared again, his killing intent erupting. A scholar can be killed but not humiliated. Moi Sect's dogs, if you have the ability, just kill us directly. Don't even dream of making us kneel. You have been wantonly acting within the Tai Xu Sect's sphere of influence again and again. One day, someone from the Tai Xu Sect will take revenge with interest. Xu Yueyue glared at the other side, his voice filled with righteous indignation. Just because of your Tai Xu Sect? You won't kneel, eh? Then die. Mo Yueyue sneered with disdain, then released his pressure even more violently and pushed towards Xu Yueyue. Crack, crack. Xu Yueyue immediately vomited a mouthful of fresh blood, and his entire body's bones were cracking. His strength was only at the postnatal realm, and the Golden Core expert's pressure was already enough to be fatal to him. Seeing that Xu Yueyue was about to explode and die, the Moi Sect's accompanying Vice Sect Master Jiang Fengyi waved his hand. 5th Elder, enough? Mo Yueyue then snorted coldly and restrained his aura. At this moment, Jiang Fengyi walked forward leisurely, his gaze sharp, staring at Xu Yueyue and asking, I ask you, have you ever seen that Nirvana again? Xu Yueyue spat out a blood clot, his voice very firm. Don't even say I haven't seen him again. Even if I had, I wouldn't tell you. In his heart, if it weren't for that Nirvana who had taken action, these people would have died at the hands of Mo Qingchen and Mo Laodao earlier. Nirvana was his savior. You have guts. However, this is meaningless. Since you refuse to say anything, there's no point in keeping you. Kill you, and we can still find out what we want to know. Jiang Fengyi's tone was indifferent. As he spoke, he raised his palm and was about to slap Xu Yueyue on the top of his head. In fact, whether he, the Vice Sect Master, found Nirvana this time, wasn't important. What was important was that the Moi Sect had to make a statement, whether it was to show the 5th Elder and the other Moi Sect disciples, or to show other sects. So after asking Xu Yueyue a question, and seeing that the other side was so stubborn, Jiang Fengyi was going to kill him directly. Stop! But at this moment, a sharp shout suddenly rang out. Jiang Fengyi paused, looking in the direction of the voice. He saw an afterimage appear and quickly approaching. Swish! After the other party stopped on the training ground, everyone immediately saw the other party clearly. Seeing that the newcomer was very young, Jiang Fengyi, Mo Yueyue, and the other Moi Sect experts immediately relaxed their expressions. But Xu Yueyue and the other Azure Dragon Peak disciples, including the logistical and servants, all revealed surprise. After all, Chu Zhetian, This #1 genius of the Tai Xu Sect was recognized by many people. Su Yanhua and the others had even fought alongside him before. Zhetian, it's you? What are you doing here? Go quickly. Obviously, Su Yanhua still didn't know what had happened within the Tai Xu Sect, and even didn't know that Chu Zhetian had already entered the nascent soul realm. Seeing the other party appear, he immediately shouted in alarm. He didn't want Chu Zhetian to fall victim to the Moi sect as well. This is the stronghold of my Tai Xu Sect's pass. Why can't I come? Brother Hu, don't worry, I'm fine, Chu Zhetian said in a deep voice. At this moment, whether it was Zhang Fengyi or Imo Yueyue, their eyes looked at Chu Zhetian with unkindness and mockery. Boy, are you also a disciple of the Tai Xu Sect? Imo Yueyue sized up Chu Zhetian and asked. That's right, Tai Xu Sect, Chu Zhetian. Chu Zhetian nodded and said firmly. Chu Zhetian, you are the #1 person of the younger generation of the Tai Xu Sect? Zhang Fengyi, as the vice sect master of the Moi sect, had an understanding of the geniuses of the younger generation of each sect. Hearing Chu Zhetian's name, he immediately raised his eyebrows and asked, #1 person of the younger generation of the Tai Xu Sect? You're not even in the top 30 of our Moi sect. Boy, what are you here for? Want to save these fellow disciples? Imo Yueyue asked with disdain. The question should be mine. You of the Moi sect are acting so wantonly on my Tai Xu Sect's territory again and again, capturing our people, occupying our strongholds. What exactly do you want? Could it be that the Moi sect wants to tear up the peace with the Tai Xu Sect? Chu Zhetian asked coldly, his eyes radiating fury as tangible as substance. Tear up the peace? Don't worry, the two sects absolutely won't tear up the peace. Because your Tai Xu Sect doesn't dare to, you'll only swallow your losses. We're just doing a little business on your territory. Your sect master doesn't dare to have any objections, understand? Imo Yueye's attitude was incredibly strong. It could even be said as unrestrained. A hint of arrogance also appeared on the face of Vice Sect Master Zhang Fengyi. Young man, you don't need to tell me reasons here, and emphasize that this is the territory of your Tai Xu Sect. Which sect's territory doesn't matter, what matters is strength. Someone from our Moi sect died in the sphere of influence of your Tai Xu Sect. You must give the Moi sect an explanation. Now, we're just here to investigate the scene. We only captured a group of ants, and didn't directly go to your Tai Xu Sect to demand an explanation. It's already considered giving you face. Do you understand? Hearing this, Chu Zhetian smiled. Chapter 103. Did I say you could leave? I understand. It means that you of the Moi sect can, relying on your strength, be unreasonable, and run wild on our Tai Xu Sect's territory, right? Even though your people died and it has nothing to do with the Tai Xu Sect, you still want to force us to tell you something. If we can't tell you, you want to harm the lives of our Tai Xu Sect disciples? Chu Zhetian asked with a smile. Hearing these tyrannical words, he didn't seem to be angry at all, but instead wore a hint of playfulness and mockery. You can understand it that way? Zhang Fengyi raised his eyebrows and nodded. Imo Yueyue even snorted coldly and said, My son died on your Tai Xu Sect's territory. If we can't catch the murderer, someone will have to pay the price. Boy, are you not convinced? The other Moi sect experts also chuckled one after another, showing off their arrogance and smugness. And Su Yanhua and the other Tai Xu Sect people, hearing these words, felt humiliated and furious. However, Chu Zhetian shook his head and said, No, I am convinced. To tell the truth, I don't like reasoning either. We cultivators are subject to the law of the jungle, with strength as supreme. Who wants to reason with the weak? I completely agree with your point of view. When the words fell, Zhang Fengyi and Imo Yueyue were stunned for a moment. It seemed that they didn't expect Chu Zhetian to react like this. Boy, stop playing tricks here. Since you're convinced, I'll ask you, have you seen that nirvana nearby? If you can't answer, your fate will be the same as theirs. Imo Yueyue, after regaining his senses, pointed at Chu Zhetian's nose and pressed him relentlessly. His son, Imo Qingzhou, had died tragically in the Golden Cicada secret realm. So the fifth elder of the Moi sect was heartbroken. His heart was filled with a violent intent. In fact, they knew very well it was unlikely that they would find nirvana, but they had to find someone to vent their anger on. The people here from the Tai Xu Sect became his target, who told them that the Tai Xu Sect was weak. Faced with a third-rate sect like the Heavenly Saber Sect, they had to swallow their anger. In front of the Moi sect, they had to break their teeth and swallow them. This was already known to everyone in the 3 sects and 2 gates in Qinglu Prefecture. Nirvana? I don't know who Nirvana is, but I met a young man in a valley before. He looked honest and simple. I don't know if he is the person you are looking for. Chu Zhetian's eyes moved, and he said calmly, "Oh." Hearing this, Jiang Fingyi and Mo Yueyue immediately exchanged glances, and their faces showed surprise. An honest and simple young man? Could it be that Nirvana was still lingering in the Golden Rainbow Mountains? Or had he just come out of that Golden Cicada secret realm? Quick, take me there. If it's really that Nirvana, I might be able to spare you and your fellow disciples' lives. Realizing that the other person was suspected to be the murderer of his son, Mo Yueyue urged urgently. Okay. Chu Zhetian nodded and turned to walk in the direction he had come from. Quick. Don't let that dog run away. I'll take you. You show me the way. Vice Sect Master, let's hurry over. Mo Yueyue, as he spoke, grabbed Chu Zhetian and brought his speed to the extreme. Behind them, the expression on Jiang Fingyi's face changed several times, and finally, he gritted his teeth and followed. Only, deep in his eyes, he carried a hint of caution and seriousness. According to Mo Qingfei, Nirvana had killed Elder Mo Xiong, who was at the Golden Core 6th layer, and 2 Corpse Kings before. With such strength, he was afraid that he was not inferior to his Golden Core 9th layer peak. And now, if the other party had already come out of the Golden Cicada secret realm and had already digested the opportunities in it, then what level of strength had the other party reached? I hope that the person Chu Zhetian met wasn't Nirvana. Don't all honest and simple young men look like that? Maybe it's just the villagers nearby. It shouldn't be so coincidental. Jiang Fengyi thought secretly in his heart. Zhetian. At this moment, Su Yanhua and the others, seeing Chu Zhetian being taken away by Mo Yueyue, their faces showed worry. You'd better pray that person is really Nirvana. Otherwise, your so-called #1 genius of the Tai Xu Sect, I am afraid, will also become the 5th elder's target for venting his anger. At this moment, among the group of Moi sect experts, the leading thin, middle-aged man sneered. In everyone's opinion, Chu Zhetian was just a genius of the younger generation of the Tai Xu Sect. Wouldn't he be at the mercy of the Moi sect's 5th elder and vice sect master? Even his life would be given or taken away. A moment later, Mo Yueyue, holding Chu Zhetian, and under the latter's guidance, arrived at a valley. We're here, Chu Zhetian said. After Mo Yueyue put down Chu Zhetian, he and Jiang Fingyi looked around, and their faces immediately changed. They saw that here, the corpses of 2 Moi sect disciples were lying there. This place was exactly where Chu Zhetian had killed these 2 before. These are our people? Who killed them? Could it be that we really met that Nirvana? Jiang Fengyi's eyelids twitched, his face full of shock and uncertainty. Mo Yueyue also looked around and shouted loudly, Nirvana dog, come out! Stop shouting, I killed these 2. At this moment, Chu Zhetian straightened his clothes and said calmly, What did you say? These 2 Moi sect disciples were killed by you? How dare you? Mo Yueyue asked with a grim voice. Chu Zhetian didn't bother to talk nonsense with him. He didn't try to explain that this was the Tai Xu Sect's territory, or that the 2 had attacked first, or anything of that sort. Instead, he directly released his aura. Buzz. A powerful spiritual power fluctuation spread from Chu Zhetian's body. Thump, thump, thump. Feeling this aura, Jiang Fengyi and Mo Yueyue immediately changed their expressions. They retreated several steps in a row. Nascent soul, Jiang Fengyi exclaimed. Mo Yueyue's heart also skipped a beat. It was hard to imagine that the person who had been so cooperative in his hands and had been obediently carried over by him was actually in existence at the nascent soul realm? Now do you know how I dared? Chu Zhetian asked with a smile. Gulp, gulp. The two of them simultaneously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Young, Senior Chu, these two ignorant guys must have offended you. They deserve to die. As for the Golden Rainbow Pass, it was indeed not thoughtful enough on our part. We acted rashly. I will return immediately, release your fellow disciples, and am willing to offer 100,000 spirit stones as compensation. After Zhang Fengyi's expression changed several times, he was decisive. His attitude instantly did a 180-degree turn, and he cupped his hands respectfully towards Chu Zhetian. The nascent soul realm and the golden core 9th layer peak. It only sounded like a slight difference, but the strength was absolutely worlds apart. As he spoke, he grabbed Xiao Yueyue, who was still in shock and disbelief, and wanted to return to the pass. Did I say you could leave? At this moment, Chu Zhetian's voice sounded with a sense of severity. Chapter 104. You want a reason now? Zhang Fengyi and Xiao Yueyue, sensing Chu Zhetian's attitude, both had their faces tense. Boy, don't be too arrogant. So what if you are a nascent soul expert? You've only just advanced to nascent soul first layer. Presumably, you haven't comprehended the laws of heaven and earth, and you don't have the true methods of a nascent soul great power. Vice Sect Master Jiang is giving you a way out. What more do you want? Xiao Yueyue said with a gloomy face. Although his attitude had become more cautious and restrained after Chu Zhetian revealed his nascent soul realm strength, it was still hard for him to be respectful. The most important thing was, he felt that faced with a newly advanced nascent soul expert, with the two of them bringing out their trump cards, they might not be without a fighting chance. In the nascent soul realm, those who have comprehended the laws of heaven and earth and can contain this kind of power in offense and defense are called nascent soul great powers. Otherwise, they are just nascent soul experts. I have something to ask you, Chu Zhetian said coldly. What does Senior Chu want to ask? Zhang Fengyi gave Xiao Yueyue a look, telling the latter to remain calm, and then cautiously asked, Kneel and speak to me. However, in the next second, instead of rushing to ask, Chu Zhetian suddenly shouted, Buzz. At the same time, he released a nascent soul realm pressure, which enveloped Zhang Fengyi and Xiao Yueyue. This move seemed familiar. It was the same way Xiao Yueyue had forced Su Yanhua and the others earlier. What did you say? Make us kneel for you? Absolutely wishful thinking, Xiao Yueyue said through gritted teeth. Zhang Fengyi also had a face as cold as water. Chu Zhetian, don't think that just because you've entered the nascent soul realm, you can do as you please. I have already given you enough face, don't be ungrateful. You have only just advanced to nascent soul. If the two of us exert our full strength, you might not benefit either. You should accept the face we gave you. Don't be ignorant of what's good for you. Chu Zhetian sneered. Really? Then show me your full strength. As soon as these words came out, the faces of Zhang Fengyi and Xiao Yueyue immediately changed. Attack! Zhang Fengyi shouted coldly, drawing his sword and directly slashing towards Chu Zhetian. The full power of a golden core 9th layer peak expert, unleashed. This sword cut out, turning into a black large bird and swooping towards Chu Zhetian. The momentum was extremely astonishing. It was a move from the Moi Sect's heaven-grade martial skill, Black Crow Severed Head. Faced with Chu Zhetian, this nascent soul expert, the Vice Sect Master of the Moi Sect did not hold back. From the start, he unleashed a killing move. Xiao Yueyue also did not hesitate, directly using an offensive magical treasure. It was a palm-sized, blue, circular stone disc, just like a mini millstone. This object was called the Life-Suppressing Disc, a heaven-grade, mid-quality magical treasure. With the different strengths of the user, the power it exhibited was also different. With Xiao Yueyue's golden core 8th layer strength, once he used the life-suppressing disc, it could threaten existences below the nascent soul 4th layer. It was more terrifying than any martial skill or spell he cast by himself. In this moment, the Black Crow Severed Head, slashed by Zhang Fengyi, swooped towards Chu Zhetian. The life-suppressing disc also expanded in the wind, turning into a huge millstone, colliding with Chu Zhetian, as if to grind the other party into meat paste. Buzz. But right between the flashes of lightning and sparks of flint, a glistening light appeared on Chu Zhetian's body, and his whole person seemed to transform into a humanoid war weapon. The body divine ability, Jade Bone Golden Body. Clang, clang. He threw out 2 punches. One punch directly shattered the Black Crow's severed head. Even the remaining power of the attack landed on his body. It couldn't hurt him in the slightest. The other punch, extremely violently, sent that huge millstone flying backward. This scene was extremely visually impactful. Mo Yueyue wanted to prevent the life-suppressing disc from flying back, but he felt that the power of Chu Zhetian's punch was terrifying to the extreme and made him completely powerless. It even caused a backlash to him, the controller. Mo Yueyue vomited a mouthful of blood. And that wasn't the end. Boom. The life-suppressing disc, after flying back, crashed heavily onto Mo Yueye's body, even suppressing him. Crack, crack, crack. Mo Yueye's whole body, the sound of bones breaking echoed everywhere. His mouth was spewing out large amounts of blood. Fifth Elder. Jiang Fengyi was horrified. He never expected that their full-force joint attack would be easily resolved by Chu Zhetian. Even with a single exchange, he had severely injured Mo Yueyue, who was in the Golden Core 8th layer. With his 2 fists, he had directly confronted a heaven-grade martial skill and an offensive magical treasure. Such methods and strength were not like that of someone newly advanced to nascent soul at all. You should take care of yourself. At this moment, Chu Zhetian's cold voice seemed to ring in Jiang Fengyi's ears, making him lose his soul. At the same time, Chu Zhetian's energy locked onto the latter. He pointed his fingers into a sword, and his fingertips' spirit energy surged. Faced with such terrifying power, Jiang Fengyi thumped and directly knelt towards Chu Zhetian. Senior Chu, spare my life. Jiang Fengyi obeys your order, kneels to speak with you. It had to be said that the vice sect master of the Moi sect was also a man who knew how to be flexible. Kneeling to a nascent soul great power was not embarrassing. As for Mo Yueyue on the other side, he was now suppressed under his own life-suppressing disc and couldn't even kneel. Chu Zhetian, seeing this, raised an eyebrow and did not kill him for the time being. In that case, let me ask you. The second Grand Elder of our Tai Xu Sect, Su Beiwang, has disappeared. Have you seen him? Did your Moi sect make a move? Jiang Fengyi shook his head, his face blank. The second Grand Elder of the Tai Xu Sect? No. Won't speak? Boom. As soon as the words fell, Chu Zhetian kicked Jiang Fengyi's chest, his foot landing hard. The other party flew out, spewing blood in the air. After landing, Jiang Fengyi's face was filled with resentment and anger. I didn't say I wouldn't speak. I really don't know. Your Grand Elder disappeared. What does it have to do with our Moi sect? Jiang Fengyi covered his chest and asked, through gritted teeth. Good question. Then, what does it have to do with the Tai Xu sect when your Moi sect people die? When you couldn't get answers, didn't you also want to kill my fellow disciples? Chu Zhetian asked with a cold laugh. That's because our people died on Tai Xu sect's territory. Tai Xu sect cannot escape responsibility. But your second Grand Elder didn't disappear in the Moi sect's territory. Jiang Fengyi argued, filled with grief and indignation. Before the second Grand Elder disappeared, the last person who saw him was your sect's Mo Qingfei. So the people of your Moi sect cannot escape responsibility either, Chu Zhetian said calmly. You, Chu Zhetian, why are you so unreasonable? Killing is not more than beheading. I have already kneeled for you, and also cooperated in answering your questions. Why are you still so aggressive? I am the vice sect master of the Moi sect. If you act like this, do you want to provoke a conflict between the two sects? Jiang Fengyi asked in grief and indignation. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian laughed. He laughed sarcastically and with disdain. What? You want to reason with me now? Chapter 105. You weren't looking for nirvana? Talk strength to the weak, and talk reason to the strong. It had to be said that Jiang Fengyi, the vice sect master of the Moi sect, was quite smart. Senior Chu, this Zhang knows he was wrong. Please spare my life. Although we captured your fellow disciples before, we didn't kill them. As long as you can show mercy, I am willing to offer 2 Earth-grade swords, plus 2 Breaking Realm pills, and 30,000 spirit stones as compensation. Zhang Fengyi climbed up from the ground again, knelt before Chu Zhetian, and begged. You didn't kill my fellow disciples because I arrived in time. As for the good things on your body, killing you, they are all mine, all the same. Chu Zhetian shook his head, his tone incredibly cold. You. Hearing this, Zhang Fengyi's face immediately revealed a strong sense of alarm. And just as he was about to say something, his entire person suddenly widened his eyes. He saw that Chu Zhetian's face twisted a few times, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into the appearance of another person. This person had a plain face and seemed to carry a touch of honesty. You are Nirvana? Chu Zhetian of the Tai Xu Sect is Nirvana? Zhang Fengyi's face was filled with disbelief. Xiao Yueyue, who was suppressed, also revealed a look of shock, followed by endless hatred and resentment. Nirvana! You dog bastard! I'm going to fight you to the death. Chu Zhetian's mouth curled into a mocking arc. He nodded and said, That's right, I am Nirvana. Isn't it me that you are looking for? Now, I am standing in front of you. What do you want? In this instant, Zhang Fengyi's whole body trembled. From Chu Zhetian's eyes, he saw a strong killing intent. No, misunderstanding. We didn't really want to find Nirvana. We were just putting on a show. Senior Chu, you are a nascent soul expert. Even if you kill a few people from our Moi sect, it's completely fine. Even if the Moi sect knows your identity, they won't retaliate, I guarantee it. Zhang Fengyi explained urgently. In the instant that Chu Zhetian transformed into Nirvana, he had already understood that the other party had no intention of leaving anyone alive. But he still held onto a glimmer of hope and pleaded with and guaranteed to the other party. And the truth was also as he said. This time, their arrival in the Golden Rainbow Mountains to search for Nirvana's whereabouts was actually just to put on a show. The Moi sect never intended to truly find Nirvana and avenge Mo Xiong and Mo Qingzhou. Otherwise, they shouldn't have just sent him, the vice sect master, over. At least, there should have been a nascent soul ancestor present. You must know that Nirvana was not only extremely monstrous in himself, killing 2 corpse kings by himself, as well as Mo Xiong and others, and he also claimed to be a disciple of the Frost Wolf sect of the Northern Cold County. After Mo Qingfei brought the news back, after a discussion among the high-level executives of the Moi sect, they decided to let it go. The Frost Wolf sect was an extremely powerful cultivation sect in Northern Cold County, and the Moi sect couldn't afford to offend it. But their people had been killed, but the Moi sect, the #1 sect of the Qinglu County, couldn't do nothing, lest they be laughed at by others. Thus, they sent Zhang Fengyi, this vice sect master, to come over with the 5th elder and a group of experts, and pretended to come to the Golden Rainbow Mountains fiercely to search for Nirvana's whereabouts. They also, in a very serious manner, captured the Tai Xu Sect personnel of Golden Rainbow Pass for interrogation. If they couldn't get any answers, they would kill these people to vent their anger. Afterward, they could announce to the outside world, the Moi sect is not to be insulted, that Nirvana has disappeared and does not dare to show his face, but the Moi sect's people cannot die in vain. This matter has an inseparable relationship with the Tai Xu Sect, and 100 people from the Tai Xu Sect must be killed to announce the Moi sect's might. As a result, Zhang Fengyi never expected that Nirvana would actually be found. At this moment, he was standing in front of him, but instead, he hoped that he had never seen him. I also think that killing a few people from your Moi sect is completely fine. Therefore, go die. Chu Zhetian nodded, his eyes blazing with killing intent. No. Zhang Fengyi's eyes were splitting, and he immediately stood up and wanted to escape. Boom. However, in the next instant, a 5-clawed golden dragon, condensed from spirit energy, carrying the power of the laws of heaven and earth, crashed onto his body. Zhang Fengyi's upper body was immediately blasted into blood mist and debris by this move, prison dragon break lock. Only a space bracelet, and his lower body fell. The essence of flesh and blood of this golden core, 9th layer peak expert's corpse was immediately absorbed by the blood wheel eye, strengthening Chu Zhetian's body. This wave caused his body's power to directly increase by more than 1,000,000 G. Now Chu Zhetian's punch, purely based on his body's power, reached a level of over 13 million G. Next, he walked towards Xiao Yueyue with a blank expression. This 5th elder of the Moi sect, who had experienced the pain of losing his son, did not beg for mercy, but instead glared at Chu Zhetian like a poisonous snake. I don't care whether you're Chu Zhetian or Nirvana, you will not die a good death. The Moi sect will know your true identity sooner or later. They will avenge us. Xiao Yueyue cursed frantically. Chu Zhetian, you don't have to be so grieved. From beginning to end, it was the people of your Moi sect who bullied the weak with their strength, and in the end, you couldn't beat me and were killed in return. It was all your own doing. Why are you so excited? When your Moi sect discovers that Nirvana is me, I will definitely already have the strength to destroy the Moi sect. After saying this, Chu Zhetian casually sucked Zhang Fengyi's sword into his own hand, and then with a flick of his hand, the sword fell. Xiao Yueyue's head immediately rolled out. This golden core 8th layer expert once again provided Chu Zhetian with a large amount of flesh and blood essence, increasing his body strength by another 80,000 G. At the same time, Chu Zhetian also took away Xiao Yueyue's spatial magical treasure. And with the death of the other party, the offensive magical treasure, life-suppressing disc, in front of them had also become ownerless. After Chu Zhetian infused it with spirit energy and left his aura on it, he re-recognized it as his own. Next, his mind moved, and the large stone disc returned to its palm-sized size. This offensive magical treasure is not bad. It has reached the heaven grade, mid-quality, and its power depends on the user's strength. Chu Zhetian smiled with satisfaction. Next, he examined the spatial magical treasures of Zhang Fengyi and Xiao Yueyue. It had to be said that as Golden Core experts, and the Vice Sect Master and 5th Elder of the Moi sect, the two of them were simply rich to a fault. Especially Zhang Fengyi, he was more wealthy than anyone he had killed before. All kinds of spirit jade, pills, and heavenly treasures were everywhere. There were also 5 Earth-grade weapons and magical treasures. Besides that, there were all sorts of talismans. Killing people and seizing their goods, snatching opportunities, it's simply too awesome. Earth-grade and even heaven-grade swords are no longer very suitable for me. Executing Prison Dragon Break Lock once, I'm afraid they will be scrapped. This Earth-grade weapon is even inferior to my current body. However, they can be given to senior brother and senior sister and Yueyue to use. Also, those Breaking Realm pills can greatly improve cultivation below the nascent soul realm, and I can give them to Chaolu later. And for myself, it's time to get a divine weapon of above the immortal grade. Chu Zhetian thought of the 2 huge coffins made of Titium demon gold, lying in the God Burial Blood domain. Chapter 106. Missimo, let's talk, shall we? Weapons or magical treasures made with Titium demon gold at the initial stage of formation are at least immortal artifact embryos. Once they give birth to a spirit, they become true, immortal artifacts. Those 2 black coffins can be completely melted into one. If you want to melt Titium demon gold, you need an extremely rare material, gold-transforming yin-yang water. This thing is extremely rare, and ordinary sects might not even have it. Only the Great Song martial academies that are spread across various places of the Great Song dynasty might have some in stock. When the time comes, I'll go to the county city and try my luck. Chu Zhetian thought secretly in his heart. It was worth mentioning that the Great Song dynasty of today was already in a state of collapse. You must know that at its peak, the Great Song dynasty possessed absolute dominance. Even those sacred lands and divine sects had to obey the orders of the dynasty. Under its rule, the various cultivation forces also couldn't easily attack each other. However, now, apart from the imperial domain, the sects and forces of each state and county would often swallow each other, and there were constant great battles. Various evil cultivator sects and forces had also emerged one after another. Demons and monsters were running rampant in the human world, and those sacred lands, divine sects, and other particularly powerful sects had the intention of becoming independent. However, although the Great Song dynasty was already in decline, it still controlled the most cultivation resources. The Great Song Martial Academy was equivalent to the cultivation sect of the dynasty. It recruited talented people for the Great Song dynasty and also cultivated countless strong people to serve the dynasty. Its headquarters was in the imperial city, and there were also branch offices of the Great Song Martial Academy in each state and county. Next, after Chu Zhetian cleaned up the scene and disposed of the corpses of Jiang Fengyi and the others, he once again returned to the Golden Rainbow Pass. After resolving the other Moi sect experts, Chu Zhetian left a lot of healing pills for Su Yanhua and the others, and also carefully inquired about some details of Su Beiwang's visit here. The second Grand Elder came here, mainly to find my whereabouts. Besides the fact that he last saw Mo Qingfei, there are no other clues. Time is of the essence. I will go to Eastern Azure City and ask Mo Qingfei, what did the second Grand Elder talk to her about the last time? 2 days later. Inside Eastern Azure City. This city was located deep within the Moi sect sphere of influence and was more than 4,000 li away from the Golden Rainbow Mountains. Chu Zhetian used a flying puppet, and it also took 2 full days to arrive. This was the third largest city within the Moi sect sphere of influence. He could see that the city covered an area of 100 li in circumference and was magnificent and spectacular. The inside of the city, as far as the eye could see, was also extremely prosperous and lively. Chu Zhetian had come to this city many times in his previous life, and it wasn't unfamiliar to him. So after entering the city, his target went directly to the Eastern Azure Manor in the west of the city. There was the residence of Eastern Azure ancestor of the Moi sect, and Mo Qingfei, as the fourth-generation great-granddaughter of the other party, was currently cultivating with the other party. At this moment, inside the Eastern Azure Manor, an old man and a young woman were strolling in the courtyard. The old man had white hair and looked incredibly kind, but his temperament was like a deep mountain and abyssal ocean. The other young girl had an exquisitely beautiful appearance and respectfully followed behind the other party. Qingfei, although you didn't obtain the opportunities of the secret realm in the Golden Rainbow Mountains this time, it was also a kind of growth for you. There is more than one corpse king nascent soul in this world. Never let this matter affect your state of mind. Mo Dongqing, that is, Eastern Azure ancestor, said earnestly. In fact, whether I obtain the opportunities or not, Qingfei doesn't care. What makes me unable to accept is the death of Uncle Xiong. Mo Qingfei, speaking of this, couldn't help but clench her teeth. The face of Big Bull, which seemed honest and simple, but was actually incomparably cold and ruthless, appeared in her mind. Sigh. Hearing this, Eastern Azure ancestor sighed. Actually, you don't have to. When Mo Xiong became your protector elder, he actually had his own selfish motives. It's just that the person is dead now, and the great ancestor will not say more. What I want to advise you is, you must let go of this hatred. That nirvana is not simple. His Frost Wolf sect behind him is even more not simple. That is a powerful sect with a void stage expert in charge. Mo Qingfei pursed her lips and nodded, not expressing her opinion. Only within her heart, the thought of avenging Uncle Xiong didn't disappear in the slightest. She had long anticipated that the Moi sect wouldn't really go against the powerful sects of Northern Cold County in order to avenge Mo Xiong and the others. But this grudge, the sect could let go, but she couldn't. I will, through my own means, avenge Uncle Xiong. It has nothing to do with the sect. Mo Qingfei muttered stubbornly and purely. Eastern Azure ancestor, hearing this, smiled bitterly and shook his head. Forget it. Forget it. It's not a bad thing that you have this obsession driving you forward. With your aptitude and potential, you might also become a void stage expert one day. At that time, you may not be unable to face the Frost Wolf sect and that nirvana. Mo Qingfei nodded, not expressing her opinion. All right, The great ancestor needs to continue to go into closed-door cultivation. Today, I will take the Enlightenment Spirit fruit and strive to get a glimpse of the prototype of the laws of heaven and earth. You can stroll around in the city yourself. Eastern Azure ancestor was still very concerned and doted on this great-granddaughter. He patted the other party's back and smiled. Imo Qingfei opened her mouth, and when she was about to say something, a low voice suddenly appeared. As if it directly rang in the ears of the two of them. There's no need to rush to stroll in the city, Miss Imo. Why don't you talk to me first? How about it? Swish. Hearing this voice, the expressions of Eastern Azure ancestor and Imo Qingfei changed at the same time. They saw a person, they didn't know when, had appeared in the stone pavilion not far away. At this moment, he was sitting there, drinking to himself. He was ignoring everyone else, as if he was in his own courtyard. And Eastern Azure ancestor and Imo Qingfei, one was at the nascent soul second layer, the other at the golden core fourth layer, but they didn't notice anything before. In this moment, the pupils of Eastern Azure ancestor contracted, and a look of caution appeared on his face. If someone could enter the Eastern Azure manor without his knowledge, the other party's strength was not to be underestimated. At least, the ability to conceal their aura was extraordinary. Imo Qingfei also stared at the other party with a serious expression. They saw that this person looked very young, with a proportionate and strong figure, and the muscle lines could be faintly seen through his clothes, but it wasn't the exaggerated bloated type. The facial contours were like being carved by a knife and axe, and he had his own kind of masculine handsomeness. At a glance, he made people feel good. If not Chu Zhetian, then who else could it be? Who are you? What is there to talk about between you and me? Imo Qingfei spat at him, only feeling that the other party's words were a bit frivolous. Fellow Taoist, who are you? Eastern Azure ancestor instinctively protected Imo Qingfei behind him and asked in a low voice. At this moment, his kind appearance disappeared, and instead, he was like an old tiger ready to pounce. This suddenly appearing young man made this nascent soul expert feel as if he was facing a great enemy. Chapter 107. Breaking the pot to ask to the bottom. Facing Imo Dongqing's seriousness and wariness, Chu Zhetian cupped his hands and was not without decorum. Tai Xu Sect, Chu Zhetian. Senior, no need to be nervous. I have no ill intentions in coming today. Hearing him announce his affiliation, Eastern Azure ancestor was stunned for a moment. Then his expression relaxed. He had originally been facing a great enemy, but upon hearing that Chu Zhetian was from the Tai Xu Sect, he immediately didn't think much of it. Although as the high and mighty Moi sect nascent soul ancestor, he currently didn't know this character, Chu Zhetian. But since he was from the Tai Xu Sect, and was also so young, how powerful could he be? The Tai Xu Sect had been weak for 100 years, and the highest strength of their Tai Shang elder was only Golden Core 9th layer peak, and couldn't threaten him at all. As for not discovering Chu Zhetian before, it was possible that the other party specialized in concealment techniques. Or, he had used a certain talisman to hide his form or aura. At this moment, hearing the three words, Chu Zhetian, a strange light flashed through Imo Qingfei's beautiful eyes. On her delicate and pretty face, there was a look of investigation and curiosity as she carefully sized up the other party. Chu Zhetian? Wasn't this the great-grandson of that senior Su who had saved her life? Was it him? At this moment, Imo Qingfei thought of what Su Beiwang had mentioned to her, to let her marry Chu Zhetian in order to repay the old man's life-saving grace. For a moment, on her beautiful, fairy-like face, there was a faint, unusual expression. No ill intentions, so you can come uninvited. Sneak into my Eastern Azure manor? Imo Dongqing snorted coldly, his eyes filled with a hint of killing intent. His kindness was only directed towards his own juniors. Outsiders dared to trespass his manor, get close to him without being noticed, and had already put themselves on the path to death. After all, what if the other party had ulterior motives, or overheard some secrets? He had to know that during this time, the reason he had stayed here in closed-door cultivation was to implement a plan. There were many hidden arrangements within this Eastern Azure manor. However, speaking of which, Those hidden arrangements didn't discover this kid at all? I'm sorry, Senior. If I didn't sneak in, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy to see Miss Mo. After all, I can't just barge in, right? Chu Zhetian smiled. Utterly preposterous. Qingfei, this kid was just now speaking frivolously to you. You handle it. Even if you tear his tongue out, or even kill him, it doesn't matter. The Tai Xu Sect sighed. No need to worry. Imo Dongqing looked at Imo Qingfei and gave instructions with an incomparably strong attitude. His backyard didn't have any other disciples or servants, and he didn't deign to do it himself, so he had Imo Qingfei handle this small-time thief. Great ancestor, there's no need to take direct action, is there? This Chu Zhetian should be the great-grandson of that senior Su. After all, the other party saved my life. We might as well ask him what he came for. Imo Qingfei persuaded in a gentle tone. Oh. Imo Dongqing raised an eyebrow, and his expression softened slightly. For your great ancestor's sake, I'll give you a chance to explain. Speak. What is your purpose for finding Qingfei? Chu Zhetian's expression became serious. Nothing else. I just want to ask her a few questions. Then follow me. Imo Qingfei nodded, said indifferently, and led Chu Zhetian into the house. Imo Dongqing eyed Chu Zhetian suspiciously for a few seconds, and followed in as well. A guest was a guest. After entering the house, Imo Qingfei also brewed a pot of tea for Chu Zhetian, and invited the other party to sit opposite her. It had to be said that the #1 genius of the Moi sect didn't have the arrogance that others had. Chu Zhetian looked at Imo Qingfei and felt a little regretful. He didn't expect to see the other party again so soon after the Golden Cicada secret realm. Only, he had changed his face. If the girl in front of him knew that he was Big Bull, he wondered if she would still sit down and talk to him. I'm afraid she would directly draw her sword at him, right? And Imo Dongqing sat beside him with a great presence, and a glimmer of speculation and suspicion occasionally flashed in his eyes. Although this kid in front of him claimed to be from the Tai Xu Sect, Eastern Azure ancestor didn't seem to trust him. Brother Chu, feel free to ask anything. After sitting down, Imo Qingfei said straight to the point. Chu Zhetian nodded. I came to find Miss Imo this time. I want to ask you, what did my great-grandfather and you talk about the last time you were together? Hearing this, Imo Qingfei's expression immediately showed a hint of unnaturalness, with a perfunctory intention. Nothing. I just asked about my injuries, and then stated my identity, and also said that the people of your Moi sect were acting wantonly in your Tai Xu sect's territory, and that they were killed by that nirvana, and they deserved it. Oh, that's all. Nothing else? Chu Zhetian frowned and asked, obviously able to feel the other party's perfunctory intention. That's probably it. What's wrong? Imo Qingfei asked with a blank expression. There were also some words that she didn't want to tell Chu Zhetian. To be honest, my great-grandfather is missing, and the last person he contacted was you. So I want to ask Miss Imo if you know anything, or did my great-grandfather mention to you what he was going to do next, where he was going, and so on? The gaze that Chu Zhetian looked at Imo Qingfei carried a touch of sharpness. What? Senior Su is missing? Hearing this, Imo Qingfei immediately exclaimed, and her beautiful eyes also flashed with a touch of worry. In the next second, she thought carefully and added, he only told me that he was going out to look for your whereabouts. As for the rest, it should have nothing to do with his disappearance. The rest? In other words, my great-grandfather also told you something else? Miss Imo, what did he tell you? It's best to tell me word for word. After all, my great-grandfather's life or death is unknown. Perhaps there is some clue in his words. For the sake of him saving your life, please don't hide anything. Chu Zhetian asked unwillingly. Impudent. Boy, do you think Qingfei is a prisoner to be interrogated? If you go on, I don't mind slapping you to death. At this time, Eastern Azure Ancestor warned in a cold voice. In his opinion, allowing Imo Qingfei to talk to Chu Zhetian was already the utmost. This was still because of Su Beiwang saving Imo Qingfei's life. But Chu Zhetian's attitude of breaking the pot and asking to the bottom caused a touch of anger to surge in his heart. Great Ancestor, calm down. It's okay. Imo Qingfei smiled, comforted the other party. Su Beiwang had saved her life. She didn't want anything to happen to the other party either. If she could help find Senior Su's whereabouts, Imo Qingfei would naturally cooperate. The rest, it's nothing, just some jokes. Senior Su in front of me praised your Zhetian great-grandson a lot. He also said that you should marry me in order to repay his life-saving grace. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian almost spit out his tea. Chapter 108. Are you the one who makes the decisions? Chu Zhetian's face, a series of strange expressions. There was even some suppressed laughter. This great-grandfather, although he's over 100 years old, as a golden core expert, his lifespan exceeds 500 years. Now, he's still young. His body is also very good. Chu Zhetian spoke for the second Taishang elder. Great-grandfather. A man is a boy until death. Great-grandfather actually wanted Imo Qingfei, this little girl, to marry him? But thinking about it, it was also normal. The old man had 8 wives and concubines, and was originally a romantic person. Seeing that Imo Qingfei was beautiful, and he had also saved her life, it was normal for the second Taishang elder to have those thoughts. Cultivators, well, 100 or 80 years wasn't anything. Life had just begun. I think you misunderstood. What your great-grandfather meant was for me to marry you. Imo Qingfei frowned and said softly. She didn't want to talk about this, but since Chu Zhetian had to ask, she didn't hide it anymore. She wasn't someone who was pretentious, and furthermore, this was just a joke. So, there was nothing to be embarrassed about. Marry me? This time, Chu Zhetian was completely stunned. Great-grandfather, you are truly concerned about everything. That's right. But I made a condition. I said that if you could help me kill Nirvana and avenge me, then I would agree to his request. And he actually thought that you could really do it. Speaking of this, Imo Qingfei shook her head speechlessly. Yes. My great-grandfather has always been very confident in me. Hearing this condition, Chu Zhetian's expression immediately became extremely strange. To help her kill Nirvana and then marry him? It seemed that this matter was definitely impossible. How could I kill myself? He. Your second Taishang elder is really quite funny. At this moment, Eastern Azure ancestor who was listening, his tone carried a touch of mockery and disdain, with a fake smile. He really hadn't heard Qingfei mention this before. But now that he thought about it, it was just a joke. Well, great-grandfather is indeed a humorous person. Chu Zhetian, hearing the mockery and ridicule in Imo Dongqing's words towards the second Taishang elder, immediately frowned and added, how is he just humorous? He is simply daydreaming. Qingfei is the #1 genius of our Moi sect in 1,000 years. And is it possible for a disciple of your Tai Xu Sect to be worthy? Your second Taishang elder is simply indulging in wishful thinking. And he wants you to kill that Nirvana of the Frost Wolf sect. Not to mention anything else, if your strength can be compared to Qingfei, then I, as the great ancestor, would agree to this marriage. How about that? Eastern Azure ancestor sneered and shook his head as he spoke. Although the words weren't too blunt, the disdain and contempt were obvious. Chu Zhetian frowned. Senior, don't say such definitive words. What if my strength is really stronger than your great-granddaughter's? Then, how will you deal with it? Why would I have to deal with it? This old man always keeps his word. You come from a weak sect with a weak foundation, such as the Tai Xu Sect, if your strength can be stronger. Then Qingfei, who is being fully cultivated by the Moi sect, then it undoubtedly shows that your potential and talent are truly outstanding. If that's the case, then you are also worthy of Qingfei. Then I will truly make the decision to give her to you. But is that possible? Eastern Azure ancestor smiled cheerfully, not taking it to heart. You make the decision? Can you make the decision? Chu Zhetian pouted, a little unhappy with this old guy, and directly retorted. Qingfei, the great ancestor can't make the decision? Eastern Azure ancestor looked at his great-granddaughter and asked. Imo Qingfei bit her lip and finally nodded. Great ancestor naturally can. In fact, she agreed, because she felt that a disciple of the Tai Xu Sect was definitely not likely to be stronger than herself. Even though Su Beiwang had praised this Zhoutian great-grandson of his to the heavens, she didn't believe it in her heart. So, she agreed without thinking, not wanting to disappoint Eastern Azure ancestor. Cough, cough, never mind. It's probably not possible between me and you. Chu Zhetian coughed, his expression becoming even more strange. If you knew I was Nirvana, you'd definitely want to kill me. Marry me, I dare not. What if you stabbed me in the back during our time together? That was truly impossible to guard against. Emo Qingfei, hearing this, chuckled and nodded. She didn't think too much. She only thought that Chu Zhetian was ashamed of himself. You know that it's impossible yourself, that's enough. An Eastern Azure ancestor also snorted lightly, then waved his hand and issued an order to send him away. All right, Qingfei has answered the questions you asked. You can leave. Chu Zhetian, with a disappointed expression, stood up. Did the second Taishang elder and Emo Qingfei only say these things? This seemed to have nothing to do with his disappearance. Since that's the case, this junior takes his leave. Chu Zhetian greeted them and was about to leave. Although he knew that the Dark Knight evil ancestor had a plot against this Eastern Azure ancestor in the near future, but Chu Zhetian didn't plan to inform the other party in advance. This old guy and himself had no connection at all. Chu Zhetian, who had lived 2 lives, wasn't a hot-blooded youth. So, he was prepared to lurk around this Eastern Azure manor, waiting for an opportunity. He would only make a move when the Dark Knight evil ancestor appeared, and could even take advantage of the situation to benefit from both sides. To be honest, this Eastern Azure ancestor's enlightenment spirit fruit, he wanted it too. I'll see you out. Otherwise, those guards outside, I'm afraid they won't be able to avoid questioning you. At this time, Emo Qingfei also stood up, smiled at Chu Zhetian. Her voice was calm and tranquil, and was incredibly pleasant to the ear. Looking at this beautiful young woman, Chu Zhetian sighed inwardly. This little girl was really pure of heart, and also extremely kind to others. Even after experiencing the Golden Cicada Secret Realm incident, her nature didn't change. This caused Chu Zhetian to feel a touch of fondness in his heart. At the same time, he was even more conflicted. He couldn't imagine that one day Emo Qingfei found out that he was Nirvana. They would inevitably become enemies. Thinking that he might have to destroy her, Chu Zhetian felt some reluctance in his heart. No need. I can go out myself. Chu Zhetian shook his head, trying to avoid contact with Emo Qingfei as much as possible. Because the more he contacted her, the more he felt fond of her. You go out yourself? What? Can you sneak out yourself? That's fine. I also want to see what means you used to sneak in before. Emo Qingfei said with interest. Chu Zhetian smiled awkwardly and could only shrug, then forget it. This is my secret. Or, please trouble miss to see me out. Emo Qingfei smiled and didn't say anything more. Instead, she stepped forward with her graceful and beautiful figure and walked towards the door. Boom. A sudden change. At this moment, a loud noise suddenly appeared. The building they were in was instantly crushed into ruins by a hammer shadow. Between the flashes of lightning and sparks of flint, Chu Zhetian instinctively pulled Emo Qingfei and jumped out of the house. At the same time, he felt a thump in his heart. Could it be that the Dark Knight evil ancestor has come so quickly? And at this moment, he heard Eastern Azure ancestor also shout, "Ha ha ha, finally here? Old man, has been waiting for you for a long time." Chapter 109. Ambush. In that instant, Emo Qingfei only felt her arm being grabbed by a strong, powerful hand. Then, a surge of powerful force acted upon her, pulling her as if teleporting. She rushed out of the house. Thus, she avoided withstanding the aftershocks of the hammer strike. At this moment, she turned her head to look, and a hint of surprise flashed through her beautiful eyes. This Chu Zhetian, the speed he erupted with in that instant was actually so fast? Since coming out of the Golden Cicada Secret Realm, in these 20 days, her strength had improved again, gaining 2 small realms. But with her Golden Core 4th layer strength, Emo Qingfei admitted that her speed was far inferior to Chu Zhetian's. Not only was this guy good at concealment, but his speed was also so fast. However, at this moment, Imo Qingfei didn't have time to consider too much and looked towards the place of the house. She saw Eastern Azure Ancestor standing in the ruins, shaking off the dust on his body with an air of superiority, but he was indeed safe and sound. And at this time, he also looked at her. Seeing that Imo Qingfei was also fine, he also relaxed. Qingfei, leave Eastern Azure Manor. This next battle is not something you can get involved in, Eastern Azure Ancestor said in a deep voice. Then, he looked up at the sky. She saw there were two figures standing in midair above their respective flying spirit beasts. One of them was a seductive woman, and it was impossible to tell her exact age. Her figure was hot, and her face was beautiful, but she was holding two huge hammers in her hands. It formed a sharp contrast with her delicate appearance. That hammer shadow that had blasted the house into ruins was definitely struck by her. The other person was a handsome man holding a black giant sword. His eyes that looked at Eastern Azure Ancestor held a hint of covetousness and heat. Looking at this, it wasn't covetousness towards Imo Dongqing's beauty. It was definitely longing for something in his hands. Huang Wuyan, Huang Jingtian, old man has been waiting for you for a long time. Imo Dongqing looked at the two, but his face showed a meaningful cold smile. What? Do you know that old lady would come to steal your enlightenment spirit fruit? The seductive woman shook the hammers in her hands and asked teasingly, I knew you would come to steal. Isn't this the despicable style that your Black Phoenix sect has always adopted? Imo Dongqing said in a mocking tone, but facing two nascent soul experts alone, he looked as steady as a mountain, not flustered at all. Your Moi sect steals things like thieves, and the things you obtain are all unjust. If you're sensible, hand over the 3 enlightenment spirit fruits in your hands obediently. Otherwise, today this place is your place of death. Huang Wuyan, that is, the seductive woman, shouted. The fluctuations she released actually contained a hint of water law aura. However, it wasn't too strong, and should only have grasped the law prototype. But the power of this law prototype was still the overwhelming power for the Golden Core and the cultivators below. The water law was one of the 5 element laws: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. And the 5 element laws were the most easily comprehended laws of heaven and earth for most nascent soul experts. After all, the 5 elements filled the heavens and the earth, and were everywhere. Therefore, with Huang Wuyan's trump card of grasping the power of the law prototype, there was indeed the possibility of killing Imo Dongqing today. Not to mention that there was a nascent soul second layer Huang Jingtian. You want it? Come and get it yourself. Imo Dongqing, however, wasn't afraid at all, and provoked the two in midair. Kill! Huang Wuyan, hearing this, immediately shouted. She tapped her foot on the back of the spirit beast and jumped down. Holding her twin hammers, she attacked Imo Dongqing with the force of a landslide. And Huang Jingtian, likewise, holding his heavy sword, flew down and slashed out a sword ray. As for the flying spirit beasts that the two were driving, they had flown away on their own. This relatively weaker spirit beasts were usually raised by a sect and could be used for transportation, but they couldn't play a significant role in battle. Swish! Swish! However, at this moment, before Imo Dongqing had even made a move, 2 other sword rays suddenly appeared and went straight for Huang Wuyan and Huang Jingtian. Boom! Boom! After a violent collision, Huang Wuyan and Huang Jingtian landed on the ground. The two of them had a serious expression, and they looked at the 2 figures that jumped out from the other 2 courtyards of Eastern Azure Manor. Imo Donghai, Zhang Bo Bing? I see why Eastern Azure old fellow was so calm. It turns out that besides himself, there are also 2 old friends of the Moi sect lying in wait here today? Huang Jingtian, seeing these 2, raised his eyebrows. Although he was saying old friends, but there was a strong killing intent in his eyes. The ones who suddenly appeared and helped Imo Dongqing block their 2 attacks were exactly the other 2 nascent soul ancestors of the Moi sect. And there were 2 of them who had grasped the power of the law prototype, nascent soul great powers. As the #1 cultivation force in Qinglu County, the Moi sect had a total of 5 nascent soul experts. Among the 5 of them, 2 had grasped the power of the law prototype. And today, they were all lying in wait here. Correct. Do you think I would really go to Eastern Azure City to comprehend the Tao all by myself? Isn't it all to lure you into taking the bait? The 2 of you today will stay here. Mo Dongqing nodded, his killing intent intense. If there was any sect among the 3 sects and 2 gates of Qinglu County whose hatred was the greatest, it wasn't the former Tai Xu Sect and Heavenly Saber Sect. It was the Moi sect and the Black Phoenix Sect. Among them, the Black Phoenix Sect's foundation and strength were second only to the Moi sect. There were 4 nascent soul ancestors in the sect, and there were also 2 who had comprehended the power of the law prototype. However, the number of nascent soul experts was 1 less than the Moi sect. It was worth mentioning that the 2 sects used to be one, and were both called Black Phoenix Sect. In other words, the Moi sect split from the Black Phoenix Sect. The 2 sects had both Gongfeng, worship, the same totem, an ancient demon god, Black Phoenix. And now, both of them claimed that they were the legitimate inheritors, and that the other was a traitor. Between each other, they were irreconcilable. They both wanted to completely wipe out the other. Therefore, when Eastern Azure Ancestor came to Eastern Azure City to comprehend the Tao, the Black Phoenix Sect smelled an opportunity. If they could kill a nascent soul expert of the Moi sect, it would definitely greatly weaken the other side's strength. And if they could seize the 3 enlightenment spirit fruits in the other side's hands, it could not be said that they could also allow the other 2 ancestors in the Black Phoenix Sect, who hadn't comprehended the Tao, to get a glimpse of the power of the law. At that time, they would be able to completely suppress the Moi sect. At this moment, seeing 2 more ancestors from her own sect had appeared, Mo Qingfei, who had been worried about her great ancestor, suddenly let out a sigh of relief. Let's go quickly. So, Mo Qingfei grabbed Chu Zhetian in turn and urgently urged. The battlefield of nascent soul experts was not a level that they could get involved in. If they were accidentally affected, they would be heavily injured if they didn't die. Chu Zhetian hesitated for a moment, but nodded, and followed Mo Qingfei to retreat to a distance. Let's stay here. We'll watch from the sidelines and wait and see. Don't worry, even if the fire burns to us, I can keep you safe. Chapter 110. Run when you have to. After retreating to a certain distance, Chu Zhetian jumped onto a building in the Eastern Azure Manor and looked down from above, and also said to Mo Qingfei. Hearing this, the latter shook her head in disapproval. Then let's watch here. If you can take care of yourself, that's fine, and I don't need you to protect me. She was also worried about her great ancestor's situation, so she stopped here. But in her heart, she secretly felt disgusted by Chu Zhetian's words. As the pride of heaven of the Moi sect, Mo Qingfei was not only powerful, but her appearance was also beautiful, and her temperament was otherworldly. There was naturally no lack of pursuers and admirers within the sect. There were also many who were very attentive. So, Chu Zhetian's words, when heard by her ears, she mistakenly believed that the other party was also trying to curry favor with her. It wasn't that she was conceited, but this kind of thing, she had seen too much, it was a matter of habit. Of course, Mo Qingfei also had the capital to be conceited. Could it be that his great-grandfather said to let me marry him, and he really thinks that there's such a special relationship between us? With his strength, if the battle really affects this place, I'm afraid I can't protect myself at all. And he'll protect me? Mo Qingfei thought in her heart, and then she didn't pay any more attention to Chu Zhetian. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a look of tension, and she looked at the battlefield on Eastern Azure Ancestor's side. And Chu Zhetian, sensing her disapproval, didn't say any more either. He was also concerned about the situation over there, and he was ready to move at the opportunity. I didn't expect it to be so lively today. People from the Black Phoenix Sect actually came, and they came much faster than the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. It seems that the Enlightenment Spirit Fruit isn't just being coveted by one family. And the Moi sect side was also prepared early on. Eastern Azure Ancestor came here to comprehend the Tao. It seems it's a deliberately released piece of news. He dug a pit, waiting for someone to come. Chu Zhetian's thoughts turned, and a playful look appeared on his face. He just felt that things were getting more and more interesting. If a few nascent soul experts were to die today, and the essence of flesh and blood from their corpses were absorbed by the blood wheel eye, he didn't know how much his body could improve. Over there, after seeing Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing appear, the faces of Huang Wuyin and Huang Jingtian of the Black Phoenix sect didn't show any panic. Ha ha ha. At this moment, a burst of laughter suddenly appeared. He saw two more figures appearing in midair, and then jumped down, arriving next to Huang Wuyin. The black-robed old man let out a burst of wild laughter. On his body, the aura of an earth law was actually surging. Hey Qinyuan, Huang Jinghong? Seeing these two, Imo Dongqing immediately exclaimed. The faces of Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing also showed seriousness. They didn't expect that all four nascent soul ancestors of the Black Phoenix sect had actually come. Hey Qinyuan, that is, the black-robed old man looked down on the three of them, Imo Dongqing, and his face held mockery and coldness. The Moi sect's three nascent soul experts gathered here and set up a trap waiting for my Black Phoenix sect to take the bait? I have to say, it's a good calculation. It's just a pity, even if the fish takes the bait, can you eat it? Just the three of you, right? Then today, you will die here. Hearing this, Imo Donghai snorted coldly. 4 against 3, and you want to kill us? Dream on. Then let's try. Even if we don't let you be completely wiped out, Imo Dongqing definitely won't survive today. The Enlightenment spirit fruits are ours, Huang Wuyin said. In the next second, this seductive woman took the lead and directly targeted Imo Donghai, who also grasped the law prototype. And He Qinyuan attacked Jiang Bobing. As for Huang Jingtian and Huang Jinghong, the two of them went straight for Imo Dongqing. The two of them looked at the other party's eyes, greedy and cold. The two of them were brothers, with hundreds of years of cooperation and tacit understanding, which allowed them to use all kinds of combined attack martial skills. In the case of 2 versus 1, dealing with Imo Dongqing naturally had a huge advantage. There was even a great possibility of killing the other party. Next, a fierce battle on the nascent soul level was about to erupt. Buzz. Facing the disadvantage, Imo Dongqing, without hesitation, directly used some kind of trump card. He saw a mirror flying out of his body, transforming into a series of prism-shaped light surfaces around his body. Heaven-grade magical treasure. Heavenly prism mirror? Imo Dongqing, you are really becoming more and more cowardly. You used a protective magical treasure as soon as you came up? Huang Jingtian, seeing this, said in a mocking tone. We're all foxes who have lived for 1,000 years. Your goading is useless against me. As long as I don't die today, then you will lose. It won't be so easy for you to kill me. Imo Dongqing remained unmoved, and in the case of 1 against 2, he only took a defensive stance. Everything was to protect himself first. Boom, boom, boom. He saw that the battle of nascent soul experts, the aftershocks were simply terrifying to the extreme. The entire backyard of the Eastern Azure Manor was razed to the ground within a few breaths of time. The terrifying spiritual power fluctuations caused the entire Eastern Azure City to seem like it was shaking. Despicable Black Phoenix sect. If you have the ability, come one-on-one. Great Ancestor, be careful. At this moment, Imo Qingfei, who was watching from afar, tightly clenched her fist in nervousness. Seeing her own great ancestor being surrounded and attacked, her face was immediately filled with worry. And at this time, Chu Zhetian watched the fierce fighting, and his star-like eyes also showed a trace of surprise. On his angular face, there was a rare look of seriousness. Of course, he wasn't also worried about Eastern Azure Ancestor. But looking at this scene, a memory from his previous life suddenly appeared in his mind. Because this memory had passed for 70 or 80 years and didn't happen to himself or those around him, Chu Zhetian hadn't remembered it before. After all, in his previous life, this was just an information he heard by chance. I remember. At this time in my previous life, tragedy happened in Eastern Azure City. A total of 7 nascent soul experts from the Moi sect and Black Phoenix sect all died one day earlier. Therefore, the two families suffered serious injuries. Especially the Black Phoenix sect, all the nascent soul experts in the entire sect died at once, and later, it was directly exterminated by the Moi sect. But what exactly happened? I didn't hear it in my previous life. Chu Zhetian's heart was filled with various speculations. He even smelled some kind of danger. 7 nascent souls all died. It definitely wouldn't be a case of both sides being hurt. Then, what was the reason? Could it be that besides the two of them, there was a third-party factor? Then, how terrifyingly strong must this third party be? To kill all 7 nascent soul experts. And they couldn't even escape? Thinking of these things, Chu Zhetian felt a chill down his spine. Having lived a second life, I don't want to be hung up here. Forget it. Regardless of whether the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor comes or not, I won't stay. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor can be killed again later. The Enlightenment Spirit Fruits, I won't bother with them. In this life, I have the Swallowing Heaven Saint body and the Blood Wheel Eye, and my future achievements are immeasurable, and it's not worth risking my life. Thinking this way, Chu Zhetian wanted to leave this place of right and wrong directly. Before leaving, he hesitated for a moment. Miss Imo, how about we leave? We can only watch anyway, staying here. Out of his feeling of goodwill towards this little girl, Chu Zhetian still persuaded her. Chapter 111. The Grand God of Annihilation's Council. At this moment, Elder Dongqing faced the combined assault of the Huang Jingtian brothers, and although he could still barely hold his own, his situation was precarious. Like a lone boat in a raging storm, it felt as though he could capsize at any moment. Meanwhile, Mo Donghai and Zhang Bobing were locked in a fierce battle with Huang Wuyan and He Qinyuan, respectively, the outcome uncertain. Both sides had come today with the intent to destroy the other, not to engage in a friendly exchange. Therefore, they spared no effort, holding nothing back. As a result, the 2 Yuan-Ing masters of the Mayu sect were unable to lend a hand to Mo Dongqing. This situation made Mo Qingfei incredibly nervous, her palms slick with sweat. Hearing Chu Zhetian's suggestion to leave, she shook her head without even turning around. If you want to leave, then leave. Mo Qingfei didn't seem resentful of Chu Zhetian's desire to depart. In her opinion, given his strength and position, it was even uncertain whether he possessed a Hunyuan realm. Facing a battle of Yuaning powerhouses, he was naturally terrified and anxious. Chu Zhetian, upon hearing this, shook his head. This little girl wasn't leaving? Then, never mind. He would leave himself. Just as Chu Zhetian was about to turn and leave this place of conflict, avoiding a potentially terrifying third party, his forehead suddenly throbbed violently several times. The blood wheel eye was clearly reacting, conveying some sort of signal to him. Under his confusion, Chu Zhetian directed a wisp of his consciousness into the god-burial blood realm. As usual, the scene here was desolate. The crimson sky, though paler, still bore a hint of scarlet. The vast sea of blood that had existed when he first entered had also vanished. It had been completely consumed in the creation of the devouring heavenly saint body. He could see gigantic corpses and skeletons scattered throughout this blood-colored world. Judging by the shapes of the skeletons, some belonged to legendary gods, demons, great demons, and divine beasts. Boy, don't go. There is a great opportunity here, and I have sensed its presence. If you obtain it, it will be of immense help to you. At this moment, a grand voice resonated. However, the speaker's specific form remained unseen. Chu Zhetian didn't dwell on this, as the Annihilation Grand God had always remained unseen. A great opportunity, but there is also an uncertain crisis here. This crisis could cause the demise of all 7 Yuan-Ing, and with my current strength, I may not be able to handle it. He spoke with a hint of caution. Having been reborn, if it was for Yueyue and others he cared about, the daring and ruthless spirit of Chu Zhetian's previous life would naturally still exist. Here, there was clearly nothing worth risking his life for. Conversely, in this life, He wanted to cherish his life even more. Only by living could he protect his daughter and those around him. A little caution was not unwarranted. Rest assured, the crisis you speak of is likely the very opportunity. At that time, I will help you deal with it. Turn the crisis into your gain. Boy, just wait and see. The Annihilation Grand God's tone carried a touch of certainty and confidence. Chu Zhetian's consciousness hesitated briefly before assenting. All right, then I will heed your advice, Senior. Chu Zhetian placed great trust in this mysterious and powerful being. If the other party had wanted to harm him, they could have wiped him out the first time he entered the God-burial blood realm. Let alone, they had reshaped his devouring heavenly saint body. So, since the other party was so certain, Chu Zhetian naturally listened. Since there was an opportunity, it definitely shouldn't be missed. Why aren't you leaving? At this moment, seeing Chu Zhetian still by his side, Imo Qingfei asked in bewilderment. Since you're not leaving, then I'm not either. Chu Zhetian smiled casually. Hearing this, Imo Qingfei looked at him strangely, then shook her head and said, You don't have to. We have no particular relationship, so you can leave if you wish. If danger arises, I may not be able to protect you. It's all right. Just do your best. Chu Zhetian smiled nonchalantly, then changed his tone and looked at the Yuaning battlefield. This is a battle at the Yuan-Ing level. I want to observe it. Perhaps it will be of benefit to me. He was telling a blatant lie without blinking. In reality, in his previous life, not to mention Yuaning battles, he had experienced countless tribulation battles. Watching Yuaning powerhouses would be of no help to his advancement. Oh, then suit yourself. Imo Qingfei nodded lightly and didn't try to persuade him further. Boom. 1,000 meters away, a deafening explosion erupted. Huang Jingtian and Huang Jinghong, two Yuaning powerhouses, had unleashed a combined attack. Their combined attack merged into a single black phoenix, charging towards Elder Dongqing. Elder Dongqing roared, his spiritual power surging. He countered with a technique of the Tai Xu Sect, the Black Raven's severed head, confronting the Black Phoenix. This technique had been used by Zhang Fengyi, the Tai Xu Sect's vice sect master, when dealing with Chu Zhetian. However, its power was vastly inferior to Elder Dongqing's current attack. Nevertheless, the result of the two attacks colliding was still the instantaneous annihilation of the Black Raven. While the Black Phoenix, still carrying a powerful residual force, slammed into Elder Dongqing. Elder Dongqing was immediately sent flying backward, and the prismatic light emitted by his protective treasure, the Tianling Mirror, was shattered. After getting up, Imo Dongqing immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Ancestor! Seeing this, Imo Qingfei cried out in alarm, her beautiful face filled with worry and solemnity. Imo Donghai and Zhang Bobing on the other side also showed anxious expressions. They immediately launched a furious attack against Huang Wuyan and He Qinyuan, intending to force their opponents back and help Imo Dongqing. However, the two Yuaning masters of the Black Phoenix Gate were tightly entangled with their respective opponents, leaving them unable to break free. Donghai Bobing, don't worry about me. It's normal to be at a disadvantage in a 2-on-1 situation, but they won't find it so easy to kill me. The sect should have already received the news, and when Donghe and Bosha arrive, it will be the time for these four hounds of the Black Phoenix Gate to meet their demise. Imo Dongqing wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and shouted to steady his allies. As he spoke, a treasure shaped like a lotus flower flew out from his body. Then, petals enveloped him. Obviously, Elder Dongqing had prepared well for this ambush. He knew that without comprehending the Tao principles, he would undoubtedly be the primary target of the other side, and everything would be focused on self-preservation. As long as he could hold out until the arrival of the other two Yuaning masters from his own sect, everything would be decided. Damn it! Let's see how many life-saving cards you have. Huang Jingtian cursed through gritted teeth, but in his eyes, a hint of anxiety was clearly visible. The Tai Xu Sect's main mountain was not too far from Dongqing City, and if they received the news, two Yuaning elders could arrive in just half an hour if they traveled at full speed. And could they kill Elder Dongqing in half an hour? If the other side acted aggressively, it might be possible. But Imo Dongqing was exceptionally conservative during the battle, focusing solely on self-preservation. Being Yuan Ing level and similarly, not having comprehended Tao principles, killing the other side was no easy task. Fellow Taoists of the Black Phoenix Gate, do you need any help? But at this moment, a sinister voice suddenly echoed across the sky. Chu Zhetian, who had been watching from the sidelines, immediately narrowed his eyes. Chapter 112. It's my turn. At this moment, a dark cloud had appeared in the sky. Several figures were standing above the dark cloud. The leading figure looked old and hunched, but that face was handsome and pale, almost sinister. The newcomer was none other than the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. Following him were the Night Demon Great Witch, who was at the peak of the Golden Core 9th layer, and 5 demon generals of the Dark Knight Palace. The strength of these 5 demon generals was all above the Golden Core 8th layer, and upon closer inspection, the dark cloud they were standing on was actually a giant soul banner. Dense black mist swirled above the soul banner, as if countless wraiths were clinging to this evil weapon. Their arrival caused the expressions of both the Yuaning elders of the Tai Xu Sect and the Black Phoenix Gate to change. The expressions of Elder Dongqing and the other 3 immediately darkened, becoming incredibly solemn and furious. While the expression of the Black Phoenix Gate side was fluctuating and uncertain, it seemed they were considering something. What kind of evil demons are you? Get lost. Otherwise, the Tai Xu Sect will surely eradicate all of you afterwards. Imo Donghai collided with Huang Wuyan once more, then roared at the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. This one is the Dark Knight Palace's evil ancestor. It seems that the fellow Taoists of the Tai Xu Sect are very nervous to see my appearance, eh? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor said coldly, his tone carrying a hint of mockery. In the next second, he glanced at the 4 Yuaning elders of the Black Phoenix Gate and asked again, fellow Taoists of the Black Phoenix Gate, I will help you. Quickly kill Imo Dongqing, but the 3 enlightenment spirit fruits in his possession need to be divided, and one needs to be given to me. How does that sound? Hearing this request, Huang Jingtian and Huang Jinghong exchanged glances, showing a flicker of interest. However, they didn't rush to express their stance. While He Qinyuan was battling Zhang Bobing, he laughed and said, good, it's a deal. Then, many thanks for the help from the fellow Taoists of the Dark Knight Palace. Apparently, the 4 from the Black Phoenix Gate were led by He Qinyuan. No problem. A wicked smile surfaced on the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's face. However, I have heard that the Black Phoenix Gate has a Phoenix Pledge of Death. I would like the fellow Taoists to swear one. It's not that this one doesn't trust the esteemed members of the Black Phoenix Gate, but I simply want a sense of security. Hearing this, He Qinyuan snorted coldly, but after a brief moment of thought, he immediately agreed. If Imo Dongqing wasn't quickly eliminated, and when the other 2 Yuan Ing elders of the Tai Xu Sect arrived, then today's efforts would all be in vain. In comparison, giving one of the 3 enlightenment spirit fruits to Higher, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor, was also worthwhile. Good deal. I, He Qinyuan, swear to the ancestor of the Black Phoenix. Then, He Qinyuan took the Phoenix Pledge of Death. He guaranteed that after the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor helped kill Elder Dongqing, he would give him 1 enlightenment spirit fruit and would not be hostile to him. The fellow Taoist is indeed full of sincerity. If so, then, fellow Taoist Dongqing, are you ready to meet your death? A triumphant smile appeared on the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's face, and then, with a sinister laugh, he drove the soul-guiding banner to descend rapidly. After the 7 of them landed, the soul banner shrunk to the size of an ordinary weapon, and then it was swung hard towards Elder Dongqing, unleashing a dark shadow. The dark shadow contained the spiritual power fluctuations of the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor and dense yin energy, cooperating with the attacks of the Huang Jingtian brothers, once again knocking Elder Dongqing flying. Swish, swish, swish. Not only that, but the Night Demon Great Witch and the 5 Dark Knight Palace Demon Generals also launched attacks towards Elder Dongqing. Although their attacks were not as powerful as the Yuaning powerhouses, they still left Elder Dongqing overwhelmed and injured repeatedly. After a round of attacks, The petals on Imo Dongqing's body shattered again. Another mouthful of blood spurted from his mouth. His face was also shrouded in a layer of black, clearly infected by the Yin energy from the Dark Knight evil ancestors' attack. Damn evil cultivators. Black Phoenix Gates bastards, you're actually colluding with evil cultivators. Elder Dongqing roared in sorrow and anger, a hint of despair already in his eyes. If before, while fighting 1 against 2, facing Huang Jingtian and Huang Jinghong, he could still defend and remain undefeated, then at this moment, with the addition of the Dark Knight evil ancestor and the onslaught of a group of top experts, he finally clearly smelled the scent of death. Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing also roared furiously, their attacks becoming even more frantic. This time, they even spared no effort to use the power of their Dao principle prototypes. But Huang Wuyan and He Qinyuan, seeing this, also used all their strength and their trump cards. Entangling their respective opponents, they held them firmly. Imo Donghai wanted to support Elder Dongqing. In his desperation, he turned around and was struck by Huang Wuyan's hammer and was equally injured. Damn Dark Knight Palace. Donghai, Bobing, you go. In the future, eliminate the Dark Knight Palace and avenge me. Today, I, Imo Dongqing, am done for. Elder Dongqing clenched his eyes and screamed towards his 2 sectmates. At this moment, the faces of Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing, in addition to their unwillingness, showed a hint of hesitation. They never imagined that this trap they had designed would turn into inviting the wolf in, and there were even evil cultivators from the Dark Knight Palace, waiting in the shadows. Seeing that things were hopeless, they also began to consider retreating. There was no choice but to sacrifice Imo Dongqing. Meanwhile, Imo Qingfei, who was squatting on a pavilion, seeing the precarious situation of her ancestor, became furious and anxious. Swish! In the next second, she stood up with a whoosh and was about to draw her sword and rush towards the battlefield. What are you doing? Chu Zhetian saw this and grabbed her hand. I'm going to help my ancestor. Imo Qingfei shrugged off Chu Zhetian's hand, but found that she couldn't get rid of him. You're only at the Golden Core 4th layer. Are you going to your death? Chu Zhetian asked with a sneer. Those evil cultivators from the Dark Knight Palace are only at the Golden Core realm either. They can participate, and so can I. Let go. Do you want me to just watch my ancestor die? If it were Elder Su, or your great-grandfather, who was being besieged now, would you stand by and watch? Imo Qingfei was struggling with her arm again, her pretty face filled with determination. At this moment, she was like a moth flying towards a flame. Right now, I don't want to stand idly by either. You stay here, and your ancestor will be handled by me, Chu Zhetian said in a deep voice. His starry eyes looked towards the battlefield, staring intently at the Dark Knight evil ancestor. Finally, he planned to make his move. However, helping Elder Dongqing was only incidental. The most important goal was to kill the Dark Knight evil ancestor. Only by killing the other side could the demon seed in his daughter's body be removed. By you? What are you? Imo Qingfei widened her beautiful eyes, and then said with a touch of impatience and contempt. However, before she could finish speaking, Chu Zhetian turned around and jumped down from the pavilion. At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly surged from his body. Feeling this aura, Imo Qingfei was completely frozen. Chapter 113. I am no fair-weather friend. Imo Qingfei's beautiful eyes widened. Yuaning. This guy was actually a Yuaning powerhouse? Thinking about her and Elder Dongqing's previous disregard for Chu Zhetian, Imo Qingfei felt somewhat ashamed. Thinking about something the ancestor had promised, a blush appeared on her face. No wonder Elder Su had been so blindly confident in his great-grandson. No wonder this guy could enter Dongqing Mansion without being discovered by the ancestor. No wonder his speed was so fast. So, he was a powerhouse on the same level as the ancestor, and even superior to herself? But at this moment, Imo Qingfei couldn't bother to dwell on too much. She watched Chu Zhetian's figure rushing over, praying in her heart that he could help her ancestor. Die. Kill. On the battlefield over there, Huang Jingtian, Huang Jinghong, and the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor, facing the desperate and severely wounded Elder Dongqing, launched a fierce attack again. This combined attack was meant to ensure the other side's death. The Night Demon Great Witch and the 5 Dark Knight Palace Demon Generals also continued to add fuel to the fire. Swish, swish, swish. Palm imprints, sword rays, and saber shadows shot towards Elder Dongqing. At this moment, Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing were out of reach and were tightly restrained by Huang Wuyan and He Qinyuan. They even considered retreating, seeing that Elder Dongqing was destined to die. Leaving here and preserving their strength, and then seeking revenge on the Dark Knight Palace and Black Phoenix Gate, was perhaps the wisest choice for the two of them. At this instant, Elder Dongqing's eyes, which had originally been flashing with divine light, seemed to be filled with despair, becoming dim and clouded. He felt that today he would truly perish. At the moment of life and death, he neither resisted nor dodged, but reached a hand towards his spatial belt. He would destroy his spatial treasure, along with everything inside. Even if he died, he would never let the Enlightenment Spirit fruits fall into the hands of the enemy. Swish. However, at this critical moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The figure was shimmering with a lustrous glow, emitting an incomparably powerful and majestic aura. Boom, boom, boom. The attacks launched by Huang Jingtian and the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor, etc., did not land on Elder Dongqing, but were instead completely taken by this figure. After the terrifying energy fluctuations, the figure remained unmoved, as if it were a mountain bathing in a raging storm. Elder Dongqing, who had originally been determined to destroy his spatial treasure, froze in place. He looked at the back in astonishment and stammered, Chu Zhetian? It's me. Old man Dongqing, I will save your life today, and you'll give me 1 Enlightenment Spirit fruit. Is that acceptable? Chu Zhetian asked in a loud voice. That's right. At this moment, he had used the Golden Body Jade Bone, helping Elder Dongqing withstand a lethal wave of attacks. Chu Zhetian had not used this body technique in the Golden Cicada Secret Realm, so he wasn't afraid of Imo Qingfei recognizing him. If the little friend Chu can do that, why not? Imo Dongqing suppressed the shock in his heart, and a glimmer of hope for life reappeared in his desperate eyes. Yes, yes. Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing on the other side were equally invigorated and shouted in unison. 1 Enlightenment Spirit fruit to protect 3 in Elder Dongqing's life, who could refuse in this crisis. And Chu Zhetian's sudden appearance caused the 4 of them on the Black Phoenix Gate side to be filled with suspicion. They hadn't expected that at this critical moment, another Yuaning powerhouse would appear and stand on the Mayu Sect side. Moreover, this person's strength was terrifying. He could withstand so many attacks alone and remain unharmed. You must know that among these attacks, 3 were launched by Yuaning powerhouses. Although these attacks did not contain the power of Tao principle prototypes, other Yuaning powerhouses, including Huang Wuyan and He Qinyuan, wouldn't dare say they were unharmed. And this person didn't seem to be from the Mayu sect. Which fellow Taoist are you? Why are you helping this group of sneaky bastards from the Mayu sect? If you join forces with us, after killing Elder Dongqing and obtaining the Enlightenment Spirit fruits, we can also give you 1. How about it? He Qinyuan's eyes flickered a few times, attempting to win him over. No need. Although I'm not a righteous gentleman, I'm also no fair-weather friend. Speaking of this, Chu Zhetian raised his sword, pointing at the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. This evil cultivator is mine. Swish. With that, he directly charged towards the other side. Are you from the Tai Xu Sect, Chu Zhetian? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor narrowed his eyes at this moment and shouted in alarm. Tai Xu Sect? Chu Zhetian? Is the Tai Xu Sect colluding with the Mayu Sect and intending to become enemies with the Black Phoenix Gate? Huang Wuyan, hearing this, shouted with a hint of threat. However, Chu Zhetian didn't care about the others and fearlessly charged towards the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. Night Demon, you don't need to worry about that Imo Dongqing first. Help me deal with Chu Zhetian. Feeling his aura locked onto by Chu Zhetian, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's eyes flickered a few times, and he ordered his 6 golden core subordinates. Although he had received information that Chu Zhetian was suspected of having mastered Tao principle power, he wanted to try and confront him. Running away directly was too embarrassing. If he could kill the other side, then today's events could still be plotted. Clang. In the blink of an eye, Chu Zhetian and the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor were engaged in battle. The long sword in his hand collided with the other party's evil weapon banner. The sword he was using now was still the weapon of Jiang Fengyi, which he had seized before. A top-grade heavenly treasure sword. The collision with the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's evil weapon banner, for a time, was not inferior. The affairs of this world are indeed changeable. Who could have imagined that Chu Zhetian had just killed the Mayu sect's vice sect master and 5 elders, and then turned around and used their weapons to help the Mayu sect? Ha ha ha, come. Trash duo. Let's fight again. At this moment, as the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor and the others were being restrained by Chu Zhetian, Elder Dongqing's pressure decreased instantly. The old man, who had already felt that he was going to die, now had a battle intent. It wasn't an easy situation to hold ground. Moreover, Elder Dongqing even had a moment to consider his situation. He also thought about what he had promised, to marry his great-granddaughter to Chu Zhetian. This guy was a powerhouse on the same level as himself? He was definitely stronger than Qingfei. Should he fulfill his promise? Thinking this way, for some reason, Elder Dongqing didn't feel the slightest heartache in giving one enlightenment spirit fruit to Chu Zhetian. Wasn't this the condition of his helping him? This was clearly the meeting gift for his great-grandson-in-law. He should. Chapter 114. Must Kill. Here, Chu Zhetian was facing the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor and his 6 subordinates, but he didn't fall behind at all. Instead, with an unstoppable, ferocious momentum, he attacked the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. Clang. Chu Zhetian's sword strike sent the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor flying backward over 10 meters. In terms of refining, Chu Zhetian was not at all inferior to the other party. Coupled with the terrifying amplification of his physical strength of tens of millions of gene, and the enhancement of bone strength when using the Jade Bone Golden Body, made every casual strike of his possess a terrifying power of 30 million gene. Even without using the power of Tao principles, he was still overwhelming the veteran Yuan Ying, the aging Dark Knight Evil Ancestor. Clang, 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 boom. As for the attacks of the Night Demon Great Witch and the 5 demon generals, Chu Zhetian directly ignored them. He activated his Jade Bone Golden Body, his body daring to clash head-on with divine weapons. A few Golden Core experts were simply unable to break through his defenses. Moreover, Chu Zhetian casually struck with 2 swords, killing 2 demon generals. The blood and flesh essence of their corpses were absorbed by the blood wheel eye, adding another 1,500,000 gene of physical strength to Chu Zhetian. Damn it! Evil Ancestor, we can't even scratch him. Chu Zhetian, this genius of the younger generation of the Tai Xu Sect, is actually so terrifying. The Great Witch Night Demon cried out in terror. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's eyes also revealed a look of fear. No wonder Bai Changqing and Jianlian were dealt with by the other side. This child had actually grown to such a terrifying extent? Don't panic. Watch my real abilities. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing a strange black color. Next, he gestured with the soul-guiding banner in his hand. 2 invisible shadows were immediately sucked into this evil weapon, which was comparable to a top-grade heavenly artifact. These 2 shadows were none other than the souls of his 2 demon generals. Next, the 2 souls were directly destroyed within the soul-guiding banner, turning into pure energy. At this moment, the black energy swirling around the banner seemed to have become even more dense. At a glance, one could feel a heart-stopping evil, bone-eating in wind. In the next second, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor waved the soul-guiding banner with all his might. A black shadow blanketed Chu Zhetian, covering him from the sky to the ground. This black shadow was formed by the Purine energy, which, unlike a spiritual power attack, could harm a person's soul. It was a prototype of a soul attack. It was worth mentioning that the technique of soul attacks could only be deployed after cultivating the spirit to an extremely high level. Generally, grandmasters at the Tao integration realm could master or even be proficient in soul-based attacks. One had to admit, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor was somewhat knowledgeable in this area. After deploying this move, a grim smile appeared on the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's face. Even if the bone-eating Yin Wind couldn't injure Chu Zhetian's soul, it could certainly make the other party mentally dazed and even unconscious. At that time, they could take the opportunity to kill this child, to remove this hidden danger. Swish. However, in the next second, a look of fear appeared on the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's face. After the black shadow enveloped Chu Zhetian, the other party seemed unaffected. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor even saw with disbelief that Chu Zhetian took a breath and actually swallowed the black mist, while he himself was safe and sound. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor didn't know that his Yin energy would be turned into pure spiritual power when it entered Chu Zhetian's body by the devouring heavenly saint body, and instead be used by Chu Zhetian. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor watched with his own eyes as Chu Zhetian broke through the black mist. Just like a battle god, he held his sword and charged towards him. Seeing this scene, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's soul trembled. His fighting spirit was completely gone. Flee. This thought was the only thing in his mind. He had originally wanted to face off with Chu Zhetian and even attempt to kill the other party. Now it seemed that the other side could break at the slightest touch. He was not an opponent at all, and the Night Demon and the remaining 3 demon generals were even less of a match. Therefore, he had no intention of taking care of these 4 pieces of trash. The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor turned and fled, a look of pain flashing across his face. Then, he threw the soul-guiding banner in his hand. This evil weapon instantly expanded with the wind, turning the space of 100 meters into a dark realm. It was just like the Dark Knight without the moonlight and starlight. This move was the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's life-saving technique, Dark Knight Veil, which he could only deploy with the soul-guiding banner. At this moment, he completely disappeared in the darkness. Even his aura was gone, as if he had become a part of the darkness. Swish. Chu Zhetian's sword, which was originally aimed at him, immediately missed. Then, Chu Zhetian attacked indiscriminately in this darkness. However, he only managed to kill the Night Demon Great Witch and the 3 demon generals, but couldn't attack the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor himself. And when he tried to break out of the black mist, he found himself running around in circles in this 100-meter area. It was as if he had met with a ghost barrier. Chu Zhetian, we'll meet again. If you have the ability, come and break into my Dark Knight Demon Palace one day. At this moment, the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor's voice rang out. Seeing that Chu Zhetian couldn't do anything to him for a while, his tone seemed to contain a hint of smugness. And from the sound, he seemed to have already moved 1,000 meters away, and was also rapidly getting further away. This move has some tricks. However, just relying on these crooked methods, you want to become invisible in my hands? Chu Zhetian sneered. He could sense that this dark area was also formed by an energy. Then it was easy. Whether it was the former myriad transformation spiritual root or the current devouring heavenly saint body, could refine myriad chi. And the devouring heavenly saint body, coupled with the divine grade technique, Supreme Tao True Book, refined myriad chi at a terrifying speed. Without hesitation, Chu Zhetian immediately activated his technique. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. In a few breaths, the Yin energy constituting the Dark Knight Veil was completely gone. This move was instantly broken. The soul-guiding banner fell to the ground. Chu Zhetian reached out and took the evil weapon. Then he stomped his foot and leapt hundreds of meters to chase after the direction where the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor had fled. Whether or not the Dark Knight Evil Ancestor died was related to whether the demon seed in Yueye's body could be removed. Today, he must kill. And on the other side, who? The Dark Knight Evil Ancestor breathed a sigh of relief. The Dark Knight Veil could last for half a stick of incense, enough for him to completely get rid of Chu Zhetian. Only the sacrifice of his most precious evil weapon, the soul-guiding banner, made him feel some heartache. But compared to his life, the priorities were self-evident. However, just as the Dark Knight evil ancestor thought he could escape, his expression changed. An incredibly powerful aura was rapidly approaching him. Chapter 115, Revelations Before Death. The Dark Knight evil ancestor took a look back and was immediately scared out of his wits. The one rapidly approaching him was a young and tall figure, carrying the aura of a god of death. Damn it! Why? Why didn't my Dark Knight veil trap him? How did he escape? After breaking through 10,000 meters again and leaving the area of Dongqing City, Chu Zhetian was only 1,000 meters away from the Dark Knight evil ancestor. Dark Knight evil ancestor, you can't escape. Prepare to die. Chu Zhetian shouted coldly, his killing intent surging. Seeing that he couldn't get rid of the other side, the Dark Knight evil ancestor could only face the battle head-on. Without the soul-guiding banner, he took out a skull staff and swung it with all his might towards Chu Zhetian. Chu Zhetian smiled contemptuously. A Yuaning powerhouse who hadn't comprehended Tao principles was not difficult for him to kill. Buzz. After allowing the Dark Knight evil ancestor's attack to be taken by the Jade Bone Golden Body, a strange and powerful wave suddenly surged from Chu Zhetian's body. Tao principle power? No. The Dark Knight evil ancestor's eyelids twitched wildly. Next, the long sword of Chu Zhetian was encircled by a 5-clawed golden dragon. Then the golden dragon broke free from its shackles, carrying the aura of destroying the heavens and the earth, and pounced towards the Dark Knight evil ancestor. In the next instant, the Dark Knight evil ancestor's chest suddenly had a blood hole that went through. His heart was gone. Boom. His old body immediately fell to the ground. Even the originally young and handsome face quickly filled with wrinkles. How did you do it? 20-something. Yuan and comprehended. Tao principle power. Are you really the original genius of the Tai Xu Sect? The Dark Knight evil ancestor felt his life force rapidly flowing away. His eyes filled with deep unwillingness. Chu Zhetian's eyes twitched slightly when he heard this. The sentence asked by the Dark Knight evil ancestor made his heart beat faster. Could it be that the other side guessed about his reincarnation? After the thought, Chu Zhetian immediately shook his head. It shouldn't be. What the other party was referring to was similar to his own use of a demon seed to borrow the body for rebirth. Having experienced the previous life, Chu Zhetian knew that some people in this world who practiced evil techniques, or whose spirit was incredibly powerful, could indeed reborn. But it was different from his rebirth. His rebirth, even time was reversed to over 80 years ago. People, events, things, all of it. Die. Chu Zhetian didn't want to waste words with the other side, and raised his sword to cut off the other party's head. Ha ha ha. You want me to die so much? Is it for your daughter? After I die, the demon seed in your daughter's body won't be released either. Ha 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 ha. The Dark Knight evil ancestor, at this moment, emitted a series of evil and sarcastic laughter. Chu Zhetian, upon hearing this, stopped his actions. What do you mean? Wasn't it you who planted the demon seed? If I kill you, the demon seed in my daughter's body can naturally be released. A sinister smile appeared on the Dark Knight evil ancestor's face, which had become as old as dry tree bark. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. Ha ha ha. This demon seed was passed on to her by her mother, Yiling Mei, the source of the demon seed. Although it has been transferred to your daughter's body, the source of the demon seed is still in her mother's body. And this demon seed was not planted by me, but by an even more powerful and mysterious existence. The demon palace behind the Dark Knight Palace will come to take your daughter one day. Ha 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 ha. The Dark Knight evil ancestor let out a final burst of wild laughter, and then, with a boom, before Chu Zhetian could question him further, he exploded and died. Chu Zhetian stood there, the expression on his face alternating between light and shade. Was the Dark Knight evil ancestor deliberately trying to disgust him, or was it the truth? Killing him Would the demon seed still exist in Ye's body? The source of the demon seed was in Yi Lingmei's body, and the one who planted the demon seed was the existence of the demon palace. According to Chu Zhetian's knowledge from his previous life, the demon palace was an immensely powerful sect of evil cultivators, more terrifying than the Dark Knight Palace. The Great Song Dynasty was divided into 18 states, and the demon palace's forces and members were spread across the 3 states of Baiyun, Donglan, and Zhongyuan. Within the forces, there existed Earth Immortal level powerhouses, and not just one. That was an Earth Immortal, a powerful existence who could truly ride the clouds and mist and destroy a city with a single sword. Getting this news made Chu Zhetian's heart sink. At the same time, his inner longing for strength reached an unprecedented level. If it was true, he would have to face the demon palace sooner or later. In addition, there was Yi Lingmei. He had to find this woman as soon as possible. Perhaps he could still know something from her. Ding, ding, ding. At this moment, the top-grade Heaven Treasure Sword, which Chu Zhetian had seized from Jiang Fengyi, shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. In the Golden Cicada Secret Realm, I used Prison Dragon Breaklock at the Golden Core Realm. The Earth-grade sword couldn't withstand the pressure and was scrapped. Now, I've reached the Yuaning realm, and using this move, the Heaven-grade sword is also broken. What a waste. It seems that before I can forge a divine artifact, I will still use my arm as a sword to deploy this move. Chu Zhetian shook his head and smiled wryly. Boom. At this moment, he felt a sudden violent fluctuation behind him, over 10,000 meters away. Chu Zhetian was startled and looked back. His eyelids immediately twitched violently. A sea of fire suddenly appeared within Dongqing City. The huge flames were rising 100 meters high, and even from a distance of tens of miles, Chu Zhetian could see it with his naked eye. Such a spectacular and visually impactful scene was like the end of the world for Dongqing City. Boy, the opportunity has arrived. Go back quickly. I will help you obtain it. At this moment, the voice of the Annihilation Grand God resonated in Chu Zhetian's mind. This made Chu Zhetian instinctively feel a tight knot in his chest. Wasn't this mysterious and powerful existence in the God-burial blood realm? Could he communicate with his consciousness directly through the blood wheel eye? Or could it be that he could send a wisp of his divine sense into his sea of consciousness? This made Chu Zhetian both marvel and feel a bit of horror. It was as if he could be spied on by a pair of eyes at any time. He secretly said again, the other party probably wouldn't harm him, suppressed the fright in his heart, and Chu Zhetian replied with his thoughts, Senior, what exactly is it? You will know when you get there. In a moment, I will send out a wisp of my spirit force to control your behavior on your behalf. Don't resist at that time. This opportunity is very good. I must help you obtain it. Chu Zhetian, upon hearing this, felt a knot in his heart once again. The other party could also directly control himself with spirit power? This method was truly shocking. Chapter 116. Do you want to be a roast piglet? Inside Dongqing City, the area covered by that vast sea of fire was exactly the entire Dongqing mansion. The flames seemed incredibly divine, though they burned fiercely, but the areas outside the burning zone were completely untouched. Not even the temperature rose. It was as if a barrier separated the inside and outside. But the temperature inside Dongqing Mansion was incredibly terrifying. All the buildings were set ablaze, burning in roaring fires, and were about to turn to ruins completely. The temperature inside was also astonishing, and even the air was distorted. At this moment, inside Dongqing City, countless people, looking at this scene, showed expressions of shock. My God, look at what that is. Such terrifying flames. Flames as high as 100 meters. I've never seen anything like it before. Isn't that the mansion of the Mayu sect's elder Dongqing? What exactly happened inside? Quick, run outside the city. This should be a battle between cultivators. Ordinary people were terrified in the face of this scene. At this moment, inside Dongqing Mansion, the 7 Yuaning powerhouses from the 2 sects, who had been fighting until it was hard to resolve, all stopped at this moment. the expressions on their faces, all revealed a deep horror. Being within this flame domain, even they felt incredibly scorching. Even when using spiritual power to resist, they felt as if their skin would be roasted. Damn it! Is this a technique from you, the Black Phoenix Gate? Imo Dongqing asked Huang Wuyan with uncertainty. I haven't asked you yet. Is this some kind of flame array laid down by your Mayu sect? Huang Wuyan also asked in alarm. After learning that neither side was responsible, both of them felt a sinking feeling in their hearts. They faintly sensed a bad premonition. On the other side, Imo Qingfei, who was hiding in the pavilion, was being roasted by the heat waves, and her face was flushed red. Even with the expenditure of spiritual power to resist, she felt her meridians were being burned every moment. Her spiritual power was being consumed at a terrifying speed. At the golden core fourth layer, she could even smell the scent of death. Without hesitation, Imo Qingfei rushed out of Dongqing Mansion, braving the flames erupting everywhere. Buzz. However, just as she was about to break out of the flame domain, she was blocked by an invisible force field. It was as if someone had laid down a flame cage to burn everyone inside to ashes. It's over. Am I going to die here today? A look of despair appeared on Imo Qingfei's face. But at this moment, a figure came rushing towards her. Imo Qingfei looked at the figure in the scorching heat waves and recognized the other party's appearance. Chu Zhetian. She cried out in alarm and then shouted urgently, "Stop! Don't come over. It's dangerous in here." This kind and beautiful girl, who was pure in nature, was not calling for help at this time, but instead loudly reminding Chu Zhetian. Swish. However, in the next second, Chu Zhetian charged in as if unstoppable. He completely ignored Imo Qingfei's warning. It could be seen that after this flame domain was laid down, one could only go in, but not out. Why are you still coming in? It's dangerous in here. I don't know what kind of being. Is it who has turned the entire Dongqing Mansion into a sea of fire? Imo Qingfei said with a wry smile. It's all right, Chu Zhetian said in a casual tone. With the strength of his physical body and his strength, coupled with the use of spiritual power for protection, such high heat had little effect on him. But he looked at Imo Qingfei and saw that the little girl's face was a kind of unhealthy red, and a look of pain appeared on her pretty face. It was clear that she had been burned by fire poison. At this moment, Imo Qingfei's throat moved, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. But this mouthful of blood had turned a charred black. It had clearly carbonized in her mouth. Swish. Facing this situation, Chu Zhetian sighed inwardly and grabbed her delicate jade hand. The touch was also of high temperature. Her original delicate and smooth skin had burns and damage. Ah. You. What are you doing? Imo Qingfei, whose hand was grabbed, cried out in alarm, and a flash of shame and anger passed through her beautiful eyes. Behave. Don't use your spiritual power to resist. If you continue like this, you'll turn into a roast piglet. Chu Zhetian saw the other party trying to resist and immediately scolded her. Hearing this, Imo Qingfei's anger immediately turned into indignation. But in the next second, just as she was about to shake off Chu Zhetian's hand with force, she suddenly widened her beautiful eyes. The action of shaking off also paused. She only felt a pure but not containing any attribute spiritual power entering her body along her hand. This spiritual power would perhaps feel warm when it entered other people's bodies. But Imo Qingfei, who was scorching all over, only felt a coolness. This not only greatly relieved the burning pain in her body, but also repaired the burns in her body. For a time, Imo Qingfei only felt that her whole body was comfortable to the extreme. It was as if she were in an ice spring during the hot summer. You're the roast piglet. Bad guy. In the next second, after she recovered, she scolded Chu Zhetian. Thinking of what the other party had said just now, Imo Qingfei was both angry and annoyed. Even if she was roasted, she was a roast swan, okay? What was a roast piglet? Come with me. There seems to be something else at your ancestors' place. Chu Zhetian didn't get into it with Imo Qingfei about who was the roast piglet, but directly held the other party's small hand. Ah, do, do we have to go like this? Emo Qingfei looked at their hands being held together and asked with some hesitation. Even if she wasn't pretending, she was a little embarrassed at this moment. From childhood to adulthood, she had never been so intimate with a man. Did this guy want to keep holding her hand? What else can we do if we don't go like this? Do you really want to be roasted? Or we can hug. Either way, my hand has to touch your body. Chu Zhetian saw the bashfulness on Emo Qingfei's pretty face, and his mouth curled up with a wicked smile. Then, let's hold hands. Emo Qingfei, hearing this, her face, which wasn't that red, immediately became redder. On the other side, the 7 Yuaning powerhouses of Elder Dongqing had all stopped attacking each other at this moment. One by one, they were all looking at a figure in midair with a deadly serious look. It was a small boy who looked only 6 or 7 years old. A small figure, a chubby and cute face, but his entire body emitted an incredibly terrifying aura. Although he had taken human form, there were 2 raised horns on his forehead. Behind him, there was also a pair of huge, fiery red wings. Every feather on them seemed to be burning with a fire that could melt metal. At this moment, the little boy's eyes were fixed on Elder Dongqing with deep anger. Old thief, was it you who stole my enlightenment spirit fruits while I was asleep? You despicable human cultivators, you all must die today. Chapter 117. Facing the Great Demon. At this moment, the aura emanating from the small figure sent chills down the spines of the 7 Yuaning masters of the Tai Xu Sect and the Black Phoenix Gate. Void. It was the aura of a Void Realm expert. A Void Great Demon. It's a Void Great Demon. Damn it. Emo Dongqing, did you steal the Enlightenment Spirit fruits from this Void Great Demon? He Qinyuan exclaimed, then angrily questioned Elder Dongqing. Old friends from the Black Phoenix Gate, this is not the time to say these things. We should abandon our grudges and join forces to fight against this Void Great Demon. Otherwise, we will all die here today. Emo Dongqing's eyes flickered a few times, and he shouted urgently to the 4 from the Black Phoenix Gate. What does the Enlightenment Spirit fruits you stole have to do with us? Huang Wuyan's alluring face was full of resentment. Do you think this great demon cares who stole them? In its eyes, we are all human cultivators. It will kill us all together. Emo Donghai said in a deep voice. Let's join forces. He Qinyuan's eyes flickered a few times, and he also spoke. He. You weaklings, can you beat me by joining forces? The little boy in the air slowly flapped his fiery red wings. He listened to the discussion of the 7 human cultivators below, his face full of disdain. There was a strong killing intent in that childlike voice. Judging by the human form it had transformed into, this Void Great Demon didn't seem to be very old for a demon. It was clearly in its infancy, but even so, its cultivation level had reached the Void Realm, showing how terrifying its potential was after it grew up. And compared with human cultivators, great demons usually had an incredibly strong physical body. In other words, the little boy in front of him was even more powerful than ordinary human Void Realm experts. Facing the 7 people's discussion and their desire to join forces, a playful look flashed in his beady eyes. It seemed that he didn't take these 7 people's discussion seriously at all. Whoosh! After they finished discussing, the little boy flapped his arms directly. 7 giant fireballs, carrying an incredibly terrifying high temperature and destructive power, were launched towards the 7 people respectively. What terrified the 7 Yuaning the most was that each of these 7 fireballs contained the power of the Fire Dao Principle. That was the true power of Dao Principle, not the Dao Principle prototype. At the Yuaning realm, whether one could be called a Grandmaster depended on whether they could initially perceive the power of the laws of heaven and earth, that is, the power of the Dao Principle prototype. And from the Yuaning realm to break through to the Void realm, the prerequisite was to gradually perfect the prototype and completely master a certain Dao Principle of heaven and earth. It could be said that the complete Dao Principle of heaven and earth, compared to the power of Dao Principle prototype, had undergone a qualitative change. Between attack and defense, its power was more than 10 times stronger. Boom, boom, boom. Facing the 7 fireballs, the 7 Yuan-ing masters from the 2 sects immediately used their respective skills to resist. In the next instant, Imo Dongqing, Huang Jingtian, and Huang Jinghong all flew out backward, spitting black, charred blood. These 3 were only Yuan-ing experts, and they didn't master the Tao principle prototype to be considered Yuan-ing grandmasters. Facing the Fire-Winged Boy's attack, they were crushed instantly. Imo Dongqing, who was already severely injured, was even on the verge of death. Almost, he had completely lost the ability to resist. He was lying there, as if he could only wait to die. He Qinyuan, Huang Wuyan, Imo Donghai, and Zhang Bobing were slightly better. They managed to barely block the first attack, but they were also charred all over, extremely disheveled, and their auras were unstable. Clearly, they had also suffered different degrees of injuries. Just one attack had made a chill run down the spines of all 7 Yuan-ing experts. They all realized that even if they gathered the power of all 7, they couldn't resist the other party at all. Dongqing, hurry up and take out the enlightenment spirit fruits and return them to this void great demon? Imo Donghai shouted urgently. Imo Dongqing, lying on the ground, no longer dared to persist. In the next second, 3 fruits, shimmering with colorful light, suddenly appeared in his hand. The fruits emitted a strange fluctuation, as if they contained the ultimate principles of heaven and earth. The fruit had even started to resemble a human form. Looking at it at a glance, it emitted a sense of spirituality. Senior Great Demon. This junior was short-sighted and is willing to return the enlightenment spirit fruits. In addition, I will offer all kinds of treasures. You can ask for anything, just name it. Please show mercy. The Fire-Winged Boy, hearing this, the chubby, cute little face, revealed a ferocious look. Demons were inherently brutal and difficult to communicate with. Even if it had transformed into a human form, it was impossible to change their violent nature. I want your lives. I want to tear out your hearts and roast them to eat. It must be very delicious. It could be seen that the little boy, who had been transformed by this great demon, seemed a little greedy. In the next second, he licked his tongue, and his killing intent first locked onto Imo Dongqing, who had stolen his spirit fruits. At this moment, a look of despair appeared on Elder Dongqing's face. He hadn't expected that he would still be unable to escape death today. The expressions of the other 6 Yuan-ing masters were also heavy to the extreme. The other side repeatedly said, "You," clearly, after killing Imo Dongqing, didn't plan to let the others go. Everyone, join forces and fight this great demon. If he kills Dongqing, he won't let us go either. Zhang Bobing gritted his teeth and shouted to the 4 from the Black Phoenix Gate. Fight! Is it possible to win? He Qinyuan's expression was serious. He was holding on to a shred of luck in his heart and didn't want to provoke this great demon at all. Perhaps the other side would calm down after killing Imo Dongqing? After paying some price, what if they could talk? Seeing that this great demon was clearly still in its youth, perhaps it could be easier to fool. Swish. But just at the moment when the Fire-Winged Boy was about to attack, at the moment when Elder Dongqing was in crisis, 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of Elder Dongqing. They were a man and a woman. Who else could it be but Chu Zhetian, pulling Imo Qingfei along? 2 more came to die? The Fire-Winged Boy, seeing this, said in a clear, surprised voice, Qingfei? Chu, little friend? What are you doing here? Little friend Chu, quickly take Qingfei and leave. Don't worry about me. Elder Dongqing's pupils contracted, and he shouted urgently to the 2 of them. He felt that he was already doomed to die, and there was no need to make others sacrifice themselves in vain. At this moment, Imo Qingfei was held by Chu Zhetian, facing this void great demon directly, and also felt her heart pounding. Although the other party looked like a cute little boy, the pressure emitted from him made people's hearts tremble. Chu Zhetian, do you have a plan? Imo Qingfei cautiously asked Chu Zhetian beside her. However, Chu Zhetian ignored her at this moment. Even his whole person seemed to be lost, and his eyes suddenly became blank. Chapter 118. Don't let this little thing run away. Chu Zhetian's eyes lost their luster, but the blood wheel eye on his forehead was emitting a blood-colored light, shining directly at the fire-winged boy's eyes. In the next second, an illusionary image that only he could see appeared in front of the fire-winged boy. In the image, a green dragon with a body of ink-green color and a vermilion bird divine beast, whose body was enveloped in flames, flew out of the blood wheel eye, one on the left and one on the right. The auras emitted by the green dragon and vermilion bird made the fire-winged boy's body instinctively start to tremble. But there was a deep respect in his eyes, as if something in his bloodline was completely suppressed. Put away the flame domain and come with me. At this moment, Chu Zhetian said with a blank expression. His voice became ancient and low, as if it came from the ancient times. There was no emotional fluctuation, but it was as if it were the will of the heavens and earth, making the fire-winged boy unable to raise any resistance in his heart. Yes. The little boy, who had been incredibly violent and unruly, nodded obediently, even with a few hints of woodenness. In the next second, he flapped his fiery red wings a few times. Strands of fire-colored light gathered from all directions on the ground and entered his wings. And Chu Zhetian walked straight towards the outside of Dongqing Mansion, even outside the city. The fire-winged boy followed closely behind. Seeing this scene, Elder Dongqing, who was on the verge of death, revealed deep suspicion. The other 6 Yuaning masters also looked at each other. Shall we fight? After regaining their senses, Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing immediately flashed to Elder Dongqing's side, looking at He Qinyuan and the others with a guarded expression. No need. Let's go. He Qinyuan's expression changed a few times. Seeing that the flame domain laid down by the great demon had disappeared, he called out to his 3 companions and immediately rushed away at high speed. Now was the time to leave. What were they waiting for? Although that great demon had been led away by Chu Zhetian of the Tai Xu Sect, but who knew what exactly was going on? What if it came back? They should escape for their lives while they could. As for the 3 enlightenment spirit fruits in Imo Dongqing's hand, the 4 from the Black Phoenix Gate didn't dare to want them either. This void great demon was clearly drawn here by this thing. The enlightenment spirit fruits had now become a hot potato. What do we do now? After seeing the 4 from the Black Phoenix Gate leave, Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing also looked at each other. Ancestor. How are you, Ancestor? At this moment, Imo Qingfei hurried over to check Elder Dongqing's condition, and her face was full of worry and concern. Don't worry, the Ancestor won't die. Cough, 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 puff. As he said this, Elder Dongqing coughed violently again, and then spat out another mouthful of blood. He immediately took a 9 revolutions Great Return pill from his spatial belt to stabilize the injuries in his body. After a few breaths, Elder Dongqing smiled wryly at Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing. Donghai, Bobing, you take Qingfei and go too. Who knows if the void great demon will come back? Its main target is me and the enlightenment spirit fruits in my hand. You don't need to stay here to take risks. Even for the sake of the sect, you can't die here for nothing. Hearing this, the expressions of Imo Donghai and Jiang Bobing, the 2 Yuaning elders of the Mayu sect, changed. After pondering for a moment, Imo Donghai didn't say whether to leave or not, but looked at Imo Qingfei with some deep meaning. Qingfei, what's the matter between you and this Chu Zhetian from the Tai Xu Sect? Why could he lure away this void great demon? Do you know any inside story? Imo Qingfei said, and shook her head. Me and him, nothing. As for how he lured away the great demon, I don't know the specifics either. It was just that Chu Zhetian said to me when he pulled me over that he wanted to subdue the other party. I don't know if it's true or not. As soon as the words fell, the 3 Yuaning elders of the Mayu sect all looked shocked. What? Subdue this great demon? That's a void realm great demon. The 3 couldn't help but exclaim. After calming down, they couldn't help looking at each other. Donghai, do you think this Chu Zhetian is joking? Jiang Bobing took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. I don't know either, but he lured away the great demon, that's a fact. And this child, if he didn't have a plan, he didn't need to appear in front of him. Since he's doing that, he probably has his considerations. Mo Donghai analyzed. Hehe. I also feel that this young genius from the Tai Xu Sect is very strange. At this moment, Mo Dongqing smiled and said with deep meaning. He didn't know what he was thinking. What should we do? Should we run or not? Zhang Bobing asked. I want to stay and have a look. If this young man from the Tai Xu Sect can really subdue the Void Great Demon, then it will be interesting. On the other side, Chu Zhetian didn't stop until he was 100 miles away from Dongqing City, in a desolate mountain forest. At this moment, Chu Zhetian's body had been temporarily taken over by a wisp of the Annihilation Grand God's spirit force. However, his consciousness was still there, and he was still communicating with the other party's spirit. Senior, is this what you said about the great opportunity? Chu Zhetian asked. A divine-grade ice and fire dragon sparrow. Isn't that a great opportunity? The Annihilation Grand God's spirit retorted impatiently. What? Divine-grade spirit beast? Chu Zhetian was shocked. That's right. The ice and fire dragon sparrow is a descendant of the ancient divine beasts, the azure dragon and the vermilion bird. And this ice and fire dragon sparrow is obviously an anomaly whose bloodline has awakened. Its bloodlines of the azure dragon and vermilion bird are much purer than its ancestors, even comparable to the first-generation ice and fire dragon sparrows. That is, the bloodline purity of the direct children of the azure dragon and vermilion bird. If I judge correctly, this little guy is not even 10 years old. Compared to the long lifespan of the ice and fire dragon sparrow clan, it's not even in its infancy. To be precise, it only corresponds to the human infant stage. How do you feel about this opportunity now? The Annihilation Grand God asked leisurely. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian was completely shocked. A baby-stage demon beast had reached the Void Realm and could transform? Senior, don't let this little thing run away. Whatever happens, we must subdue it. Such a terrifying great demon can only be made harmless to humans under my education and cultivation. Chu Zhetian expressed immediately. The Annihilation Grand God laughed loudly. Boy, watch closely. Watch how I deceive this little guy. It seemed long to say, but the communication between Chu Zhetian and the Annihilation Grand Gods was only an instant. At this moment, the two phantoms of the Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird, at the top of Chu Zhetian's head, were becoming more and more vivid. Even the aura emitted was exactly the same. Child, do you recognize me? Chapter 119, The Great Conman. At this moment, inside the God-Burial Blood Realm, two incredibly massive skeletons were radiating a primeval aura. It was this aura that, through the God-Burial Blood Realm, reached the outside world and transformed into the phantoms of the Azure Dragon and the Vermilion Bird. That's right. Among the thousands of gods and demons that had perished in the God-Burial Blood Realm, there were also ancestral beasts like dragons and phoenixes. Child, do you recognize me? At this moment, the Azure Dragon Phantom in the outside world, under the control of the Annihilation Grand God's will, spoke to the fire-winged boy, who was the Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow in front of him. Child, do you recognize us? The Vermilion Bird Phantom also emitted a gentle, feminine voice. The Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow's eyes were filled with reverence, longing, and excitement. Ancestors! Are you the two ancestors, Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird? It was worth mentioning that, although the Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow clan was called a clan, there was only one member of the clan in each generation. As a descendant of the Vermilion Bird, that is, the Phoenix, the Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow inherited the racial ability of Nirvana. Every Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow was actually reborn from the Nirvana of the previous one after its lifespan had been exhausted. Therefore, this little boy in front of him, besides being somewhat immature in mind, also inherited the memories of the Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow's generation by generation. Especially the two ancestors, the Azure Dragon and the Vermilion Bird, who were the most important components of their memory. The Azure Dragon Phantom nodded its dragon head. That's right. It's us. Why are the two ancestors on this person? The little boy's face was filled with confusion and bewilderment among his innocence. Because this person is our inheritor. After we experienced an ancient battle, we only had a wisp of spirit left, and now we are parasitizing in this person's sea of consciousness. Child, don't ask so much now. Our spirit is still incomplete and cannot be sustained for too long. Now, I want to pass on some of our inheritance to you, through the divine sense. Next, you must completely open your heart and open your sea of consciousness to accept this inheritance. He will help you become a generation of demon gods and restore the glory of the dragon and phoenix clans. The Azure Dragon Phantom said with seriousness. At the end, his tone was filled with temptation. Even, it carried a touch of enthusiastic excitement. At this moment, hearing the Annihilation Grand God's ability to con, Chu Zhetian's consciousness was in a state of bewilderment. When Chu Zhetian first contacted him, Chu Zhetian only felt that the other party was unfathomable. That feeling was like facing the god of creation who opened the heavens and created the world. Mysterious, powerful, solemn, and majestic. However, now, the image of the other party in Chu Zhetian's heart seemed to have shaken. From a grand god, he had directly become a great con man. This style of doing things was also a case of being unscrupulous. There was no solemnity of a grand god at all. Senior, can this work? Chu Zhetian couldn't help but ask. What? Are you questioning me? You must know that the demons are even more concerned with bloodlines and inheritance than you human cultivators. The levels are even more strict. A great demon facing its ancestors could hardly raise a heart of resistance. Moreover, I am using the actual corpses of the Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird to transform into their incarnations. Coupled with my promise to give him the inheritance of his ancestors, it would be strange if this little thing wasn't confused. Do you think that all demons are as cunning as you human cultivators? This little thing's mind is still very pure. How can it escape from my palm? The Annihilation Grand God said with conviction. Hearing these words, Chu Zhetian secretly muttered. What do you mean, you human cultivators are cunning? Aren't you a human? Well, even if you aren't human, you seem to be more cunning than anyone. At this moment, this ice and fire dragon sparrow, hearing the words of the Azure Dragon Phantom, a flicker of excitement and anticipation appeared in its eyes. Inheritance? The inheritance of the ancestors? Yes, ancestors. Fire will definitely cooperate and accept the inheritance and not let you down. One day, the glory of the dragon and phoenix clans will be restored. It turned out that this ice and fire dragon sparrow had given itself a name, Fire. Indeed, it was very appropriate. He tapped his chubby little face, and the two fleshy protrusions on his forehead seemed to have turned slightly red because of his excitement. The two fiery red wings on his back even emitted incredibly hot energy. All of this showed the excitement and restlessness of this infant-stage great demon. Whoosh! Then, his body twisted and changed for a while, and finally turned into an incomparably divine demon beast. He had turned back into his true form to better accept the inheritance. He had a dragon head, a horse's body, a tiger's tail, and a pair of fiery red wings on his back. He was covered with green scales, and the wings were covered with phoenix feathers. It looked like a cheelin with wings. Moreover, its body length and wingspan had reached a huge 100 meters. It looked majestic, handsome, and domineering. Chu Zhetian, seeing this scene, couldn't help but feel a surge of greed in his consciousness. Such a powerful and divine demon beast. If it became his spirit beast partner, how cool would that be? Come, open your mind. Accept the inheritance. The Azure Dragon Phantom's tone became even more seductive. The Vermilion Bird Phantom beside it also transformed into a beautiful and dignified woman wearing a phoenix crown and smiled and nodded to Fire in encouragement. Buzz. Then, a strange fluctuation enveloped Fire. Then, it drilled into his sea of consciousness. This fluctuation was a wisp of the power of the heavenly Tao oath. However, Fire didn't know, but was taking this heavenly Tao oath with a deep reverence, longing, and desire, and completely opened his mind to accept it. It's done. Boy, you can get along with this little thing in the future as the inheritor of the Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird. At this moment, the Annihilation Grand God was communicating with Chu Zhetian's will. It's done like this? Will it be exposed in the future? Chu Zhetian was full of doubts. What if the other side found out later that they were being conned? What if they turned against each other? At the present stage, he couldn't deal with a void great demon's betrayal. Don't worry, I gave this little thing a little treat, while helping you establish a partnership oath, so it must believe it without any doubt. Moreover, the partnership oath I have established between you is a kindred blood pact. This little thing will consider you the closest existence in the world in the future. Its mind is still that of a child, and as long as you treat it sincerely, even if it knows it has been deceived in the future, it will still follow you devotedly. All right, I have spent a lot of my spirit force to help you collect this opportunity. I need to continue to rest. You can communicate with this little thing yourself. As the Annihilation Grand God's words fell, Chu Zhetian only felt that he had regained control of his body. At the same time, the phantoms of the Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird on his head also disappeared. In the next second, he looked at the Ice and Fire Dragon Sparrow, which had grown to an immense size, but was actually still in the infant stage. A look of closeness appeared in his eyes. Chapter 120. Absolutely impossible. This closeness seemed to come from the soul. Chu Zhetian even felt that he and the other party could communicate mentally. In his previous life, when he cultivated to the Tribulation Transcendent stage, he had also subdued demon beasts, and even more than one. However, those few demon beasts were subdued by Chu Zhetian through violent means, so the relationship between the two was that of master and slave, and they were not equal. Chu Zhetian only used them as combat tools, and later they all died in a series of battles. So, he had never generated the closeness that he felt now with those few spirit beasts. But in this life, Chu Zhetian felt that he had a sense of kinship with Fire. And similarly, the look in Fire's eyes didn't have the hostility and violence of a great demon towards human cultivators. Swish! He transformed into human form again and rushed towards Chu Zhetian. Dad! He even called out in a childlike voice. Hearing this shout of Dad, Chu Zhetian's heart was filled with mixed feelings. All right. In this life, he had originally prepared to give all his fatherly love to Yueyue. Now, how did he get one more thing that called him Dad? It seemed that in the future, he had to take out 1,000th of his fatherly love to nurture this divine-grade spirit beast. Boom. In the next instant, this little and seemingly petite demon beast that measured 100 meters long crashed into Chu Zhetian's arms like a swallow returning to its nest. Chu Zhetian was immediately sent flying backward, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, the other party didn't mean to attack. Otherwise, even if he had cultivated to the body-refining Shattering Mountains realm, he might have been injured. Fire, your strength is a bit too strong. Be more gentle in the future. Chu Zhetian got up after, and said with sweat all over his head. Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. Fire didn't mean to. Perhaps the inheritance that Ancestor Azure Dragon gave me allowed me to touch the threshold of the Tao integration realm, and Fire is a bit more powerful. He. The little boy scratched his head and said with a playful smile. It looked like a mischievous little brat. It's all right. Dad doesn't blame you. Chu Zhetian touched Fire's head and said with paternal love. In his heart, a stormy wave surged again. What? The Annihilation Grand God used the opportunity to establish a partnership pact and slightly gave Fire a little treat, which allowed the other side to touch the threshold of the Tao integration realm. For a time, Chu Zhetian had a deeper understanding of the power and terror of this Annihilation Grand God. No wonder, the other party confidently expressed that Fire would not be suspicious of the inheritance matter at the moment. With such a mysterious and powerful existence by my side, I don't know whether it is a blessing or a curse. Being too strong, was bound to cause panic. At this moment, Chu Zhetian couldn't help but have this thought in his heart. On the other side, Dongqing Mansion, swish, swish. Two figures were driving flying spirit beasts and arrived late. They were a man and a woman. The man looked to be in his 50s, but his figure was still upright. The woman was graceful, and her majesty carried a hint of charm. After landing, the two of them looked at the scene of the afterglow of the fire and ruins of Dongqing Mansion, and the expressions on their faces immediately became incredibly solemn. In the next second, when they saw that Imo Dongqing and the other two were still alive, and there was also Imo Qingfei, a junior beside them, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. The two were the other two Yuaning elders of the Tai Xu Sect, Imo Dongha and Jiang Bosha. Dongqing, how are you doing? Where are the hounds of the Black Phoenix Gate? Are the enlightenment spirit fruits still there? Jiang Bosha sized up Imo Dongqing from head to toe and asked in a stern tone. She could see that the other party was seriously injured, and her heart skipped a beat. The people from the Black Phoenix Gate ran away. As for the enlightenment spirit fruits, speaking of this, Imo Dongqing smiled wryly. They are still in my hands. Now this thing was like a hot potato. Holding it, he was afraid that the void great demon would come back and claim its life. If he lost them, it would be a pity. Heh, the hounds of the Black Phoenix Gate, 4 against 3, and they fled in defeat? Hearing this, Imo Dongha asked with a cold smile. Since the 3 Yuan-ing members of their own sect were still alive, and the enlightenment spirit fruits were also there, it seemed that the Black Phoenix Gate had been defeated. It wasn't the Black Phoenix Gate that lost. It's a long story. Dongha, why don't you go? We are actually waiting for a result. At this moment, Jiang Bobing coughed and said vaguely. And beside her, Mo Qingfei moved her lips and didn't know what to say for a while. Mainly because there were several ancestors on the scene, it wasn't easy for her to speak. What exactly happened? Jiang Bosha and Imo Dongha were immediately puzzled and asked with a look of confusion. And just at this moment, the faces of Imo Dongqing, Imo Donghai, and Jiang Bobing all changed. Jiang Bosha and Imo Dongha, pupils contracted and looked up at the semi-empty sky. While Imo Qingfei's small mouth opened slightly, her expression looked incredibly wonderful. There was a figure in the semi-sky, riding on the back of a strange beast that was rushing over rapidly. Who else could that figure be but Chu Zhetian? As for the strange beast, it was Fire, this void great demon. It was just that, since he was already able to transform, even after returning to his true form, he could control his size. Therefore, Fire had shrunk from the massive body that was over 100 meters to the size of an ordinary horse, and that was suitable for Chu Zhetian to ride. Tap, tap, tap. After a few breaths, in the shocked eyes of the crowd, Chu Zhetian and Fire landed. After jumping off Fire's back, Chu Zhetian smiled faintly. Everyone, are you all still waiting? And Fire shook its dragon head-like head and looked at the human cultivators in front of him. His eyes still carried a few hints of unkindness. Especially the gaze looking at Elder Dongqing seemed to have a hint of anger. It made Elder Dongqing feel a chill down his spine. You are Chu Zhetian? You thief. You are looking for death. How dare you appear in Dongqing City? And just at this moment, a discordant voice suddenly rang out. Jiang Bosha glared at Chu Zhetian, and her voice transmitted a hint of anger and killing intent. Buzz. That Yuan-ing second layer's powerful pressure also relentlessly enveloped towards Chu Zhetian. From that posture, it was clear that she wanted to attack directly. Imo Dongqing, Imo Donghai, and Jiang Bobing were all shocked. Bosha, what are you doing? Say something nice. Little friend Chu is now our closest friend. Absolutely impossible, ah. Bosha, stop it. Say what you want clearly. The 3 of them all rebuked, for fear that Jiang Bosha would really attack Chu Zhetian, especially when they felt that Fire's eyes, which were like 2 bronze bells, were staring coldly at Jiang Bosha. They were even more frightened. You don't need to stop me. You may not know that this thief killed the Ma Yu sect's vice sect master Zhang Fengyi And also 5 Elder Yueyue. He is simply outrageous. Jiang Bosha pointed her sword at Chu Zhetian and said through clenched teeth,